quite sure why it's slanted, but okay. Sorry. I can fix that. There you go. Okay, let's see. Mic test. Sound on the app is good. Thank you, Ellie. Appreciate that. Oh, okay. What happened there? Yeah. Okay. Alright. We're almost there. Okay, Facebook. Sound is good on Facebook, app, and YouTube. Thank you, Vimesh. Okay. Alright, let's go. B'Shem Hashem Na'aseh v'Natzliach, Shiur Torah, Bruchim Habayim. We're back here on our Wednesday night, Shiur Torah, Wednesday night, where it's the Stump the Rabbi, we're after some Divrei Torah. You guys will ask some questions, and BeEzrat Hashem HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give us the answers. Lots of interesting things to learn tonight. Tonight's Shiur is sponsored by our very dear friend, Shmuel Levi. הקדוש ברוך הוא יברך אותו ואת משפחתו בכל מכל כל חיים ארוכים שלמים מלאים תורה מצוות וגמילות חסדים. Tonight's shiur is also going to be for his הצלחה and also for the רפואה שלמה for Rav Ephraim ben Shulamit, רבנית שרה בת ענת, רבנית לבנה בת שרה, אבי מורי דוד בן נסריה, אמי מורתי דוריס בת ז'ורה, and all of Am Yisrael and all the righteous Noahis that continue to learn with us and support all of the amazing things that the organization is doing, Baruch Hashem. Just as a brief update, the reminder for everybody, these books, Baruch Hashem, are going like, what do they say, hotcakes? Okay, they're going like hotcakes. The new English / Hebrew book that Rabbi Ephraim and his Rabbanit published, Baruch Hashem is being distributed all over the country and actually even a few places out of the country. In Canada and a couple of other countries, Baruch Hashem, have stepped up to the plate and ordered the books. We also have a couple of schools have asked for them to be given to their students as curriculum, Baruch Hashem. So anyone that wants to order themselves a box of 20 books or more can go to, for free, which is the best price. You can go to the kiruvstore.org, 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 Baruch Hashem. Over there you'll be able to get yourself a box that you can give to people in their hand. You can give to people as part of the Mishloach Manot. You can give to people in your community, Jewish community, and get people closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that's one. Second thing is, we have Purim. Purim is upon us. It's literally right around the corner. There's a bunch of mitzvot that already begin now for the holiday of Purim. One of them is the Machatzit shekel, the mitzvah of giving the Machatzit shekel. This is an obligation for every Jew to give a Machatzit shekel. During Purim, there is not just a famous wearing a costume and mishloach manot that people like to do, but more important than both of them is actually the matanot le'evyonim, to help the poor. One of the things that's been keeping us busy over these last few weeks is preparing for our Baruch HaShem annual distribution to the poor. On Purim, we're setting up again, since we had a lot of success with it the last year, we're setting up a learning program for the holiday of Purim by a bunch of avrechim and young kids. They're going to be learning for several hours on Purim itself, for the merit of those people that donated to help them, to feed them for the holiday. These are tzaddikim that will be learning for your sake. So anyone that donates for that on our campaigns will certainly have a lot more than the typical matanot le'evyonim, because you'll have Torah as well as helping the poor, as well as fulfilling the mitzvah. You can go to bhpurim.org, bhpurim.org. That's B as in BeEzrat, H as in HaShem, purim.org. And you can donate as much as your heart allows. Baruch Hashem. So tonight is a Parashat Vayekel, and really this time of the year is one of my favorite and least favorite at the same time. Now, how could that be? On one end, it's a time where we have to do a lot of the operational stuff for the organization. That's always necessary, but now there's also tax season. We have to prepare the tax receipts for all of the donors for the past year. It's an enormous amount of work, and no matter how much help and preparation I get each year, it's simply never enough. And there's always a huge amount of work that we have to do in that preparation. So on that end, it's one of my least favorites, because we still have to do everything else. We still have to do the shiurim, we still have to learn Torah, we still have to teach and help all of our dear students around the world, and we still have to do our major campaigns to help the poor in Israel during this time. So it's an enormous amount of things to do. So that makes it very difficult. On the other end, it's one of my favorites because it's also a time, it's really the only time during the year where I get to know a little bit more about who's actually donating to the organization. Because during the year, I generally don't look at things. I look at things once a month, usually just to see what came in, what came out. And that's it. I don't usually know if you're donating during the year or not, if you have a monthly donation, if you have something that you're doing randomly. Usually the only ones that I do know about is if it's the holiday donations where during Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, because for those people I have to pray for. Or if somebody's making an exceptionally large donation and they need my guidance from it, or they just want to let me know about it. But generally speaking, there's a lot of people that donate quietly throughout all of the year, and I only get to know about it now. So it's wonderful to see some of the people that support, that help us, that care about what we're doing so much that they're willing to put their hard-earned money behind it. And this is something that has everything to do with our Parashat Pikudei. Because one of the things that a person, and not just one, not two, not 10, not 100, not even 1,000, people have asked me endless times, and I'm sure other rabbis have been asked the same question, is how do you know if your tshuva is being accepted by HaShem? Meaning, how do you know if you're doing good or not? Now, of course, everyone knows the obvious. If you're violating Shabbat, you're not doing good. If you're wasting seed every day, you're not doing good. If you're still walking around without clothes on, you're not doing good. Now, unfortunately, some people are clueless about this, and as we'll see later tonight from one of the stories of the Baba Sali that I just learned today, that some people don't even know the importance of that. But even more so, a person can be doing tshuva, can be going on the right path, but still be on the side of the klipa, meaning the side that you don't want to be on. And the same thing even goes for people that are already frum. There are plenty of frum people that are extraordinarily righteous, tzaddikim, that you could literally smell the kedusha and you know, from afar away. You can see how they live their life. And then there are some reshaim, wicked people, that happen to wear a kippah, that happen to cover their head, and even sometimes happen to cover their body, and walk around modest. But we extremely wicked, like these criminals that are being prosecuted by the Attorney General of New York for their predatory business of merchant cash advance that we've been speaking against for the last 5 or 6 years, if not more. And as I've said it once and I've said it twice in all of the lectures, in the end, this is not only going to create an enormous amount of damage for the economy, for the small businesses. These predatory lenders are going to cause a damage to our community, our Jewish community. And this is the reason why we have to continue speaking against them, because they are literally evil people that are destroying any part of society they're being allowed to be a part of. But they walk around and sometimes they pretend to be religious, sometimes they pretend that they're proud of their Judaism, but I can assure every single person that's watching this, they do not present Judaism. They are not considered religious. They are considered reshaim that have no share of the world to come until they do tshuva. And I'm afraid that some of the things that I already mentioned years ago is actually coming to a head, where this business is going to end up being shut down. This entire industry will ultimately be shut down. People will end up going to jail, lose all of their money, and what's happening right now is just the beginning. It's just small tokens. So anyone that's still delusional enough to be in that business or think that business is kosher, give it time, and you'll see for yourself all of the words of the sages that come true. This is not my words. This is all the words of the sages that we mentioned over the years in the lectures. We have a playlist of lectures about the predatory lending industry and how we want to make sure to distance ourselves away from those reshaim. As Moshe Rabbeinu said to Am Yisrael, stay away from those people. Stay away from those wicked people lest you get punished just for being next to them. Oy la rasha, oy l'shcheno. Woe to the wicked and woe to his neighbor. And it's important that a person know what is actually being said in the Torah. And as a correction to what I said before, it's Parashat Vayekil, not Parashat Pekudei. So with that being said, it's don't worry, everything is prepared. Everything is known. Everything is in front of us, BeEzrat HaShem. But the key is to understand that this predatory lending industry is not a representation of the Jewish people in any way, shape, or form. But at the same token, some of these people are giving the so-called free ride in the community because they donate a lot of money. So if somebody donates a lot of money, does that mean that they're righteous? Does that mean that they're righteous? If somebody is a big spender in the Jewish community, does that make him righteous? So we're going to see. We're going to see. And again, it's Parashat Vayekil. And we're going to see what our Holy Torah tells us. Because everyone wants to know where they stand. Everyone wants to know if they're on the side of the klipa or they're on the side of the kedusha. And tonight, Parashat Vayekil is going to uncover one of the hidden tests that the Zohar Kadosh tells us about in regards to knowing where you stand And in fact, it is a very, very easy test to do. You can do it without supervision. You can do it as we speak. I suggest you think about it, but you won't have to think much. 30 seconds, you probably already have it. Now, some of you are going to be happy. You're going to be elated once you do this do it at home test. You're going to be happy. Why? You'll know you're standing in a good place. As long as you continue, good for you. Olam Haba is being prepared for you as we speak. On the other hand, some of you are going to be disappointed. Man, I thought that I was doing better. Don't lose any hope. This is not to insult anyone. This is not to degrade anyone. This is simply a status check. So we all know where we stand in order for us to either continue doing good or improve. And of course, without a shadow of a doubt, some of you are going to continue choosing to live in denial. And I'm not referring to the river in Egypt. I'm talking about living in denial, thinking that, come on, the rabbi is making it up, as if I have some type of vested interest to make stuff up. So, with that being said, Rabotai Kareem, let's dig in to this beautiful parasha and see what we can learn. In the beginning of the parasha, we see something unusual. Now, anytime you look into the Torah, you're going to find something. But there are certain things that are not just beautiful, not just interesting, but they're unusual. Because it seems like it's like a puzzle piece that fits just right in, but you don't really know what it's going to do yet. Now, this entire parasha is talking about building the Mishkan, all of the things we talked about in the last couple of parashot, all of the construction of the Mishkan, the menorah, the Aron HaKodesh, all of the different amazing things that were there. And the whole parasha talks about the details. But yet, in the beginning of the parasha, Hashem sticks a couple of sentences in there that seem like they don't fit. Where it says Moshe assembled the entire assembly of the children of Israel, and he said to them, these are the things that Hashem commanded to do them. Now we're thinking, we're going to continue what we already been doing for the last couple of weeks, building the Mishkan. No. For 6 days work may be done, but the 7th day shall be holy for you, a day of complete cessation before Hashem. Anyone who does work on it shall be executed. You shall not light fire in any of your dwellings on the Shabbat day. And then it goes back to the Mishkan. That's it. So we have one of the 12 times in the Torah that HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us and warns us about Shabbat and how a Jew must observe every Shabbat without exception. And those that violate it at the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, at the time of the Sanhedrin, would be executed. Today it's a spiritual death penalty. What's a spiritual death penalty? Tragedies you don't want to know of. Well, a person would die young, before the age of 50, or would live to see his own children die, and all types of horrible things that are, in essence, the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu fulfills the death penalty. As the Gemara tells us, even though the Sanhedrin is no longer here to implement the 4 different types of death penalties, according to the Torah, that does not mean that the death penalty is no longer valid. It just means that Hashem took over. And He implements them in different ways. He doesn't kill right away. Just like the Bet Din, that has a strategy of how they do certain things. There has to be a warning. There has to be an explanation. The person has to know what they're doing and what the ramifications are. There has to be witnesses. Same thing with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, where he also has a system of when he decides to execute somebody. But the question still remains, what is it doing here? These couple of sentences about Shabbat seem like they don't fit. If you told me about this in next week's parasha, the week after, fine. But why is it here? And especially, it's only a couple of sentences. You have to keep Shabbat. We heard already, we have to keep Shabbat. We've been hearing about Shabbat already for the entire book of Exodus. Why do we have to be reminded of it again? That's because, Rabotai Karim, in last week's parasha, we learned about the horrible sin that Am Yisrael made, the mistake, by following the Erev Rav with the golden calf. The golden calf's sin is something that Am Yisrael is still suffering for until today. This idolatry was something awful that Am Yisrael had to get punished for in different ways. Those that mamash worship the idol, they got killed by the water that Moshe Rabbeinu made them drink. Those that sinned a little bit, the Gemara says, Moshe Rabbeinu and the Levi tribe killed them with the sword. Killed them with the sword. Those that thought about sinning, they didn't quite sin, but they thought it's a good idea. They're on the way to go do it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu killed them with the plague. The plague that followed. But then there was those that didn't sin, but they watched their brothers and sisters, their fellow Jews, sin, and they didn't say anything. They didn't rebuke, and they're being punished until today for that. As the Gemara in Masechet Shabbat says that if a Jew sees another Jew making a biblical sin, he must rebuke him, and if he doesn't, he'll get the same punishment as him. In so many words, he's considered as if he sinned himself. So, after this golden calf, and Hashem forgave us, but with a condition, we need a tikkun. We need a rectification. HaKadosh Baruch Hu reminds us, the rectification for Avodah Zarah is observing Shabbat. When you observe Shabbat, like you're supposed to, you know the laws, you know what to do, you're celebrating Shabbat, it's not like a burden on you, you learn Torah on Shabbat, you're not talking business on Shabbat. That's a tikkun for Avodah Zarah. And what is it doing here? Because we need a tikkun for the mistake we made in Parashat Ki Tisa. Therefore, before we get into building the Mishkan, we have to know observing Shabbat is required in order for you to turn your own house into a house of Hashem. This is why Rule 101, for all people that want to be in love with Hashem, and for Hashem to be in love with them, for them to have a share in the world to come, for their tshuva to even begin, they must observe Shabbat. Without observing Shabbat, no mitzvah that you're doing is going to be rewarded in Olam Haba. Why? Because you have no Olam Haba that's good. Any mitzvah that you do, you'll get rewarded in this world. Because a Jew that does not keep Shabbat has no share of the world to come. So here HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling us, yes, I want you to build the house of Hashem, the Mishkan, but I also want you to turn your house 3,000 years later into a house of Hashem. You want it to be a house of Hashem? It begins with Shabbat. It begins with Shabbat. You want to do tshuva? It begins with Shabbat. You don't keep Shabbat? No tshuva. Now is tshuva, is Shabbat enough? It's a big mitzvah. But it's not enough to remove a person from the klipa. That's why the parasha continues with more details. And we're going to see how they're all connected. HaKadosh Baruch Hu then starts giving Moshe Rabbeinu the instructions of what to do, and Moshe Rabbeinu tells those instructions to Am Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu tells Am Yisrael, take for yourselves a portion before HaShem. Everyone whose heart desires to donate shall bring the portion before HaShem, gold, silver, and copper. So here we see that Moshe Rabbeinu is repeating what HaKadosh Baruch Hu already told him in the previous portions of the Torah, which is, each person needs to know that when they're giving, when they're donating money to publicize Torah, to help Talmidei Chachamim, to help people do tshuva, they are giving to them. But in reality, they're going to receive a lot more than they give. Not receive a lot more money only, but to receive a lot more merits. If a person truly knew how much value each mitzvah is, they would literally have no time to do anything else but mitzvot. That's why the Chachamim teach us, grab and take all of the mitzvot as much as you can. Because you don't know how much time you have left in this world. So Moshe Rabbeinu tells them to give of themselves, but he uses specific words. Everyone whose heart desires to donate. Meaning, there's no obligation to give all of your money. There's no obligation to give only a little bit. But rather, give whatever your heart desires. Because what you're giving is you're giving for the sake of sanctifying Hashem's name. Now, the Me'at Tzori says that this connection between Shabbat and giving and building of the Mishkan is because the building of the Mishkan cannot be done on Shabbat. It cannot be done on Shabbat. So even though you're building the house of God, it has to be done during the 6 days. Furthermore, this giving is not just everyone gives and everyone is judged the same. Rather, Moshe Rabbeinu is telling us, you're going to be judged based on what you give and how much you give. Does that mean that if you give a lot, automatically you're righteous? Not necessarily. Does that mean that if you give a little, you're automatically wicked? Not necessarily. So how do we know? We see what else Moshe Rabbeinu said. Moshe Rabbeinu says, all the wise-hearted people among you shall come and make everything that Hashem has commanded. Again, Moshe Rabbeinu is talking to the people with symbolic language. Not just telling them, come give, each person gives 1 shekel, or each person gives 1%, or 10%, or 20% of their money. No. He says initially, give whatever your heart desires. Then he's telling them, if you're wise-hearted, meaning if you know what's good for you, spiritually speaking, you shall come and bring everything that Hashem said into a priority in your life. And then in verse number 21, he says again, every man whose heart desired came, and everyone whose spirit it perfected him. Everyone whose spirit perfected him brought a portion before Hashem. So here, we're seeing the third stage. Your heart desires, good. You prioritize it and you're a wise-hearted person, good. But then it says something, wait, who gave in the end? Everyone whose heart desired came, and whose spirit perfected them. Well, if their heart desired to give, doesn't that mean that their spiritual status is perfect? No. As one of my very dear students asked me, if it's saying over here that everyone whose spirit perfected them came, doesn't that imply that not everyone gave, or at the very least, not everyone's spirit was perfected despite everything that's happened? whether it's the miracles in Egypt, Kriyat Yam Suf, Mount Sinai, the forgiveness for the sin of the golden calf. Even after all of this, there was still some stingy people. Yes. Yes. In fact, Rabotai, this is the test that all of you want to know. How do you know if you are on the side of the Shekhinah or the Klippa? We see here that some people gave, and that giving showed that their spirit was perfected them. Obviously, if they gave, they desired to give. But they also got the extra sign from HaShem that this type of giving shows that their spiritual status has been perfected. They're on the side of the Shekhinah. They're on the side of the Kedusha, the holiness. On the other hand, some people gave, and although they desired to give, they gave after all, their type of giving showed that they're not exactly perfect. In fact, they are still on the side of the Klippa. How would one know what's what? Because there's different types of givers. There's a person that gives and donates to BeEzrat HaShem, as an example. And they, let's say, between them, their household, let's say, makes a couple of $100,000 a year. Now, it's a respectable living. Certainly, it's a comfortable, but by no means is it rich. Especially if you live in places like New York, Los Angeles, different, Florida. Some of these places, just to pay your rent or mortgage is pretty much almost 50% of your salary. As one person recently published that, Americans are very often making fun of people from other countries that are making less money, but not realizing that, yes, you may be making, your $5,000 or $10,000 a month, but when half of your money is going to a rent or mortgage and the other half is going to bills and you're left with nothing, like most Americans don't really have much of a savings account. Most Americans have a debt that they really can't afford. In fact, the debt crisis that's looming over America and the rest of the world is unlike any other time in history, to the point where if the economy slows down even a little bit, the domino effect that will happen will be worse than anything we've ever seen, including the crash of 2007 and 2008. And we're already seeing signs of that happening as we speak from the commercial real estate industry, where there's a lot of defaults as a changing market. Banks are defaulting, needing a rescue. But it looks good because technology is doing good and there's obviously certain things that are doing well. But that's still the illusion. The illusion that happens right before the collapse, whenever that collapse may be. The collapse may be next week, the collapse may be in a year from now, or 2 years from now. Either way, certainly we know that there is cracks in the economy as we speak. But the point being is that making a lot of money doesn't necessarily mean the person has a lot of money. I remember when I lived on Wall Street, and I spoke to a business owner over there, and that was very, very familiar with the New York market, and he's been in New York for many years. And I told him, what's the difference between this place, this area, versus other parts of New York? He said, this area of New York is high income earners, meaning people that make a lot of money. They don't necessarily have a lot of money, but they make a lot of money. Make 500,000, 1 million, 2 million, 5 million, but they don't necessarily have a lot of money. Other parts of New York that we were talking about, he says, over there, they have a lot of money. They may or may not make a lot of money, but they have a lot of money. So sometimes people make a lot of money, but don't necessarily have a lot of money. So there's a person that could be making a couple of $100,000 a year, and he's giving or she's giving $20,000, $40,000, 10 or 20% of their income to the organization BeEzrat HaShem that we run to help us publicize the Torah, help people do tshuva, help people convert, help people get closer to HaShem, help people eat. Respectable amount of money, significant percentage of what they make. Fantastic. They get guidance from the organization, they get questions answered from time to time whenever they need. But they are constantly giving. On the other hand, there's also other people that give. They give $100 here and there, $200 here and there. But they live in a $2 million apartment. They live in a $3 million house. Now, is the giving between the two the same? Absolutely not. But it's not because of the total amount of money. Rather because it's the total of percentage. Where one is giving 10 or 20% of what they have to publicize Hashem's name, and the other one is not even giving 0.1%. But if you ask both of them, they both love Rabbi Reuven or Rabbi Ephraim or Rabbi Shavit or one of the rabbis of the organization, Rabbi Lev. They love them. Has their life been changed? Absolutely. Changed my life. Have they given you any guidance? Absolutely. Have they helped you in ways that you've asked? Absolutely. Have they given you free stuff? You know, books, USBs. Oh yeah, absolutely. They send sometimes even too much. Oh, so wait. So this one gives 10, 20% of their money. The other one gives not even 1%. And in fact, the second one that gives less has a lot more money. Just their house is worth more than the first example. How come? That's what the Torah is talking about. Everyone's heart desire to give. Everyone likes, if you're watching Rabbi Reuven's lecture, you're watching Rabbi Ephraim's lecture, you're watching Rabbi Lev's lecture, you're watching Rabbi Shavit, Rabbi Naim, Rabbi Didi, and the rest of the rabbis of our organization. If you're watching our lectures, obviously, you like it. You like it, you're motivated by it, you're inspired by it, you're learning from it. Sometimes you contact and you ask additional questions. Good! Continue asking. So everyone's heart desires to give, to help, to give back a little bit. But there's a different giver. One giver gives with all of his heart. I'm going all in here. I'm going to fulfill my obligation because I know that publicizing a Kadosh Baruch Hu's name through them is good. Why? Because it helped me. If it helped me, it can help other people. Another person that's getting just as much help will say, yeah, I love them. They helped me. They changed my life. Best rabbi in the world. And I'm going to send the money when I remember to. But I don't understand. You desire and you desire. We ask you if you like it, both are going to say the same. You're both going to answer the same questions the same exact way. So how come the percentage giving is so radically different? That's when the Chachamim tell us, that's how you know if their spirit has been perfected. What does it mean spirit has been perfected? If right now you are in a status of giving, you just want to give. Your main priority in life is to give. You want to give. You wake up in the morning, I want to look for an opportunity to give. Who can I give? Oh, I can give my wife a compliment. Who else can I give? Oh, I can give my kids a hug. Who else can I give? I give the rabbi some help. I can give him a ride to shul. I could, give him some money so he can do whatever it is that he needs to do. I can give to the poor. I can do all these giving. I can just give. Once in a while, you get, but you're not looking for getting. You're not looking for a woman to marry based on her meeting your to-do list. Oh, she has this height, this color hair, this bank account, this preferences, this amount of this amount of that. Okay, she can give me. You're not looking for somebody to marry based on what they give you. You're looking for somebody to marry based on what you can give them. Oh, I see her. I can help. I can help make her even better. I can see how I can do something to make her happy. I can do something to make him happy. The reason why most people either don't find somebody to marry, or once they get married, they don't want to be married anymore, is because they're constantly looking to take. And when the other side can't give them what they want, they don't want it anymore. People don't go into relationship with a number one objective of giving. They figure, listen, I am what I am. I'm enough. I'm enough. I'm a prize. I'm already giving. What are you giving exactly? Well, I'm a nice person, so I have some money, so I'll cook and clean for him. I'll buy her some presents. So how's that giving? Why, that's not giving? No. If your priority is what she can do for you, if your priority is what he can do for you, you're not a giver. You're a taker. If your priority is what is everybody going to do for me, you're not a giver, you're a taker. Does that make you a bad person? Not necessarily, but you're not a tzaddik. You're not a tzaddikah. And your tshuva is not exactly yet at the level of kedusha. Why? If you're at the level of kedusha, you're constantly looking for opportunities to give. Give, give, give. Why? You want to be like HaShem. HaShem only gives. He takes nothing. But if a person desires good, but he gives little and takes a lot more than he gives, and he's looking to take more, and he wants more, and she wants more. Can you do this for me? Can you answer for me? Can you go for me? Can you do this for me? Me, 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 me. If me is constantly in their sentences, or I, and me, and I, and me, and how can you do for me? And how about I? And how about me? Me, me? Unfortunately, you are in a status of not kedusha. You're in a sort of klipa. Klipa. When a person reviews themselves and sees, yes, listen, you know what? I'm inspired, I like, but I'm also getting a lot more than what I'm giving. And in fact, when you do checks and balances, you see, I'm not even giving anything. Either literally, I'm not giving anything, or I'm not giving anything relative to what I'm getting. That means you're on the side of klipa. But if a person is giving on a regular basis to their spouse, to their children, to their work, to their customers, to their inspiration, then you're on the side of, you're on a good side. If you're giving for the Torah, if you're constantly giving to the Torah, it's also good. You could be on the side of Kedusha. And that's why the giving is very indicative. It's very, very clear. Do-it-yourself test to know whether you are on the side of the Shekhinah, the side of the Kedusha, or you're on the side of the Klipa. If you're a giver, you could be on the side of the Shekhinah of Kedusha, of holiness. If you are a taker, that means you are certainly on the side of the Klipa. Now a person can say, wait, listen, Rabbi, I want to give, but I don't have any money. I just lost my job. I'm having a tough time. I got high bills. I got medical expenses. Who said anything about you have to give money? It's not just money that's you have to give. As one of my other students told me the other day, listen, I don't know, maybe I should be, slowing down some of the learning so I can make more money, because that way I can also support more kiruv. And then he got a response from me that he wasn't expecting, which was, Who said that God wants your money right now? What? Have you ever heard a rabbi tell you who said that God even wants your money? Usually it's, if you donate for the Torah, it's good. And you're right, donating for the Torah is good. But doesn't mean that it's good from you. Sometimes Hashem doesn't want your money. But your Shema Yisrael that you say every single day says that you have to give to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to publicize His Torah, all of your heart, all of your life, and all of your possessions. And your possessions are not always something that you can see in a bank account or a stock portfolio. But rather, what you truly have is not money. What you have is skill set. You have a specific skill that can help publicize the Torah, publicize Hashem's name. You have time where even if you don't have a skill set, that time that you can dedicate to publicize the Torah by arranging lectures, by publicizing shiurim, by giving out books, that certainly is giving of yourself. Sometimes HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want your money, but He wants your skill set that He gave you. He wants the talent that you have. He wants the time that you have. He wants the profession that you have. Sometimes He wants your connections. You know rich people that you can direct them to donate to publicize Hashem's name. Those are your assets. Your assets are not necessarily, your spiritual assets are not necessarily always money. The way that you can give for the sake of Hashem, sometimes it's money, sometimes it's not. Sometimes even if you want to give a lot of money, you don't have to give. But you can still be a giver. And you can still be on the side of Kedusha. How? I'm giving everything I have. I have a skill set, I'm going to use that skill set. I have time, I'm going to use that time. I have connections, I'm going to use those connections. Whatever I have that HaKadosh Baruch Hu blessed me with, I'm going to use that in order to sanctify HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name. And when a person is constantly on the path of giving, they're going to look for any way that they can give. Now, what if you have money and you have a skill set? Do you give the skill set or the money? If you want to be on the side of Kedusha, the side of Shekhinah, you give both. Why? Because that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded us when He said to us, B'kol me'odecha, all of what you have, all of your possessions. You happen to be blessed extra where some of your possessions is time, skill set, connections. But you also happen to have money too. You have to give full force with everything you have. Full force with everything you have. Why? Because that's what's going to show that your giving is a sign of your perfection. Now, of course, there are some people to say, come on, no. I have responsibilities. My house has a big tax bill every year. My business is not doing as well as it did last year. My kids' tuition is sky high. And of course, everybody has whatever excuses they want to listen to. But at the end of the day, a person is going to have to answer for everything. And one of the things a person has to answer for is, how come you that make $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 a month, you cannot even sign up to give $100 a month? A phone bill. In America, a phone bill is $50, $100 a month. You can't even sign up to give $50 or $100 a month, but a child, teenager, 15, 16 years old, that only makes a couple of $100 a week, giving out newspapers, he can. How come the 15-year-old, the 16-year-old can? When my bank called me today, they said, our compliance department is asking some questions. I said, what's the questions? We have a non-profit organization, everything is legit, everything is audited, everything is No, we don't have any questions about the non-profit organization. So what's the question about? He goes, no, the question is about your personal account. Personal account? What do you care about my personal account? He goes, no, we see that, your organization, you guys get donations and then you give, you give to poor people in Israel, you give to, distribution of books, you give all this stuff. But then in your personal account, you're doing the same thing. You just send the money with the few expenses that you have, the rent, everything else you give. Why are you giving? Is this money that people are giving you to give? Like, are you taking other people's money so you can give? Is this like another business? I said, no, it's my personal account. So, who are these people that you're giving to? I said, poor people, people that need. But aren't you already doing that in your personal account? And you're in the corporation and the non-profit? I said, yeah. So why are you doing it with your personal account too? I said, because I don't need all of that money. If I have extra, I give. If somebody needs, I give. That's what we do. We're givers. She was a little confused. She doesn't understand. Isn't the world just chasing money so they can accumulate more? But that's the problem. People don't understand. If you love HaShem, you want to emulate Him. You want to be a giver. You don't want to be a taker. If you happen to need help, no problem. Somebody gives you, no problem to take. But you don't want to be a taker where you're constantly looking for people to give you stuff, even when you don't need. Like a few times already, it's happened over the years where somebody asked me, listen, Rabbi, I see that you have these high-end tefillin on your website. Can I have one? And of course, even though I already know what they mean, I play stupid. And I say, yeah, you can just go to the website and just pick whichever one you want and then put your credit card in and order it and we'll send it to you within, a little bit of time. A week, 2 weeks, a month, depending if we have to order it or if... No, can I just have one? What do you mean you have one? Can I just give you $2,000 tefillin? Why? Oh, I don't really have one. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't have one? Didn't you say you keep Shabbat? Yeah, but it's my tefillin that I have are not like yours. Oh, so you do have tefillin. You just want a free one. That's much better than what you have. Yeah, but it'll make me much holier, and don't you want me to be holier? It's great when people want to be holy on other people's accounts. Wonderful. These are takers. These are takers. The worst ones are the ones that pretend like they don't have, but in reality they have, and they pretend like they don't have because they want to take. They want to take. So the Torah is telling us here that we have to be givers because our giving, especially our giving, in our relationship with Hashem, where we're giving to publicize His name, we're giving of our time to learn His Torah, to help His people. That giving is symbolic of where our neshama stands. If we're constantly taking, we have a work to do to get ourselves out of the klipa. Now, it's not just about giving, it's also about what you give. Because you have sometimes weddings, people invite people to weddings. And of course the couple is expecting people to give them gifts. Rightly so. You go to a wedding, you have to give a gift. But every wedding has some smiles and disappointments at the end. Why? Because when the couple looks at who gave them what, they see that some people were really generous. Wow, look at this guy, this uncle this, brother this, friend this, colleague this. Gave a lot. Look, wow, so nice of them. But then they see this other person that not only didn't give much, didn't even give enough to cover the cost of having them there. it cost $150, $200 to feed this person for the night in this wedding, but he only gave them a $50 check. And if he was poor, he doesn't have, it's one thing, everybody would know, but it's never so. Usually they have a bunch, they make money, they just don't like to give it. That's a person that is definitely still on the side of klipa. If you have money for the sake of saving it only, you're spiritually unhealthy. Saving is good, but not at the cost of serving Hashem and being decent to your spouse, to your children, to the people in your life, to the Torah. So a person goes to a wedding and they don't even give enough to cover the plate. It's best that they find a way to give in other ways, to at the very least make up for it in some ways. But it's still not necessarily making up for it. Now, what you give counts. It's not just giving that counts. What you give. Where do we learn that from? We see here. The men were bringing, in verse number 22, chapter 35, the men were bringing with the women. Everyone whose heart desired brought bands, bracelets, rings, and machoch. What's this machoch? Every kind of gold ornament. And every man who raised a raising of gold before Hashem. Machoch. What is this machoch? What is this machoch, Rabotai? The Gemara in Masechet Shabbat, page 64, says machoch was a sort of a garment that was made out of precious metals and used for sensuality, for women specifically, to entice their husbands and so on. Why would they give this? Before we answer that, we see that later on, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu commands Moshe Rabbeinu to build the kiyol with copper, and Moshe Rabbeinu sees the copper that was donated was predominantly the mirrors of the women. In those days, the mirror was made out of copper. And Moshe Rabbeinu didn't want it. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, no, you take those mirrors and you make the holy kiyol from it. That the Kohanim are going to wash their hands and feet to sanctify themselves before serving in the Bet HaMikdash, before serving in the Mishkan. Because they use those mirrors for good. And they have done tshuva. How do we know they have done tshuva? Because they also gave their machoch, or in Hebrew it's called kumaz. They gave those tools, those clothings, those garments for sensuality, for beautification, for things that in essence, instead of making them attractive, it made them attracting. And there's a very big difference. Because they gave away, they sacrificed their sensuality, I'm accepting their tshuva. I'm accepting what they're giving with open arms. When a woman wants to know whether she is close to Hashem or not, she has to review what has she sacrificed for Hashem. When a man wants to review whether he's close to Hashem or not, he has to review what has he sacrificed for Hashem. Not because Hashem needs anything from you, chas v'shalom. He is perfect. But rather, how much is this relationship with Hashem worth to you that you are sacrificing to Him? And as we know, sacrifices are done every day at the Bet HaMikdash. And we are supposed to make sacrifices for Hashem every day. Sometimes the sacrifice is time, sometimes it's money, sometimes it's attention, Sometimes it's kavod. Sometimes it's sacrificing a bad habit, a horrible character trait. What have you sacrificed? If you are still walking around the street hoping for everyone to look at you and compliment your beauty, you still have yet to sacrifice the ultimate sacrifice to Hashem. If you're still walking around as a show-off with your fancy watch, but your tefillin are still from the days of Antiochus, you still have not sacrificed enough. If you have no problem spending $2,000-$3,000 to go on vacation, $2,000-$3,000 on a watch, $2,000-$3,000 on all types of hobbies that you have, but you're not willing to spend that on tefillin, you're not willing to spend that on publicizing Torah, you're not willing to spend that on a mitzvah like an etrog that you're only going to use for a week, but you have no problem spending it on vacation, you have no problem spending it on a watch or a series of watches, then you, my dear friends, still are on the side of the klipa. You need to work on it. You need to get yourself out of the klipa. Why? Your giving, your nature of giving is an indication of where your soul stands. If you are a taker, your soul is in the side of the klipa. You need to get it out of there. And stop keeping it there like a hostage. If you are with a nature to constantly give, the main thing you need to check is that you're giving to the right places. How do you know you're giving to the right places? Whether you're receiving blessings in your life. Sometimes blessings come in the form of money. Sometimes blessings come in the form of good health. Sometimes blessings come in the form of spiritual health. Sometimes blessings come in the fact that you're closer to Hashem and you're learning. Different blessings to different people. But nonetheless, if you're giving to the wrong places, it could even be worse than not giving at all. As Rabbi Nachman in Breslev says, giving to the wrong places is the equivalent of wasting seed. Chas v'shalom. Now, one of the great examples of someone that gave non-stop to be the soldier, the ultimate soldier of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that lived in recent generations was the Baba Sali. The Baba Sali reached a level of holiness that miracles became second nature to him. When he was living in Netivot, but he would go and travel from time to time, and he had an apartment in a different place. And one time he came to this apartment only to find 3 thieves, 3 burglars inside the house, full of bags of the stuff that he had. He had all types of fancy, beautiful things in the house. But these burglars were scared to death when they saw the Baba Sali. Not because Baba Sali was big and strong, but rather because they couldn't understand, how did you come in here? He says to them, what are you doing here? They told him, we're stealing stuff. So how come you're still here? We couldn't find the door. Ah, you couldn't find the door, huh? Yeah, how did you get in? Right there. They looked like, where? Right there, the door. They can't see a door. Please, we've been here for a few hours. We can't find the door. Help us. He said, put back everything you stole. Empty out your bags, put back everything you stole. And then you'll see the door. They start taking stuff out. They took everything out. But they still can't see the door. Said, please, let us get out of here. Please, we're sorry. Says, you didn't give everything. No, look, the bags are empty. He said, check your pockets. They check their pockets, and one of them checks, and he finds the golden spoon in his pocket. He said, oh, yeah, I forgot this. And he puts this on a table, and literally on the spot, they saw the door. Like any other normal being would see. He says to them, don't steal anymore. This was Baba Sali. The very same Baba Sali, a story was just publicized this week from the people that lived this miracle for the last several decades, where there was a guy, a Jew from the kibbutz. Him, his wife, and his daughter did not keep anything, unfortunately, like many of the people in the kibbutz. And one day, the awful disease arrived at his doorstep, and it hit him like Malach HaMavet. In a very short period of time, he was not only bedridden, but he was on his deathbed, in the hospital, all types of monitors and tubes, and he was dying. The wife is crying, the daughter is crying, and then the doctor comes and says to them, today is going to be the last day that your husband is going to be in this world. Say your goodbyes. This is where he was. On his last day. The doctors have given up all hope. There was nothing else that could be done. The organs were failing. And that's it. The wife is crying. The daughter is crying. They're hysterical beyond comprehension. And at the same time, a religious Jew passes by them and sees, what's wrong? What do you mean, what's wrong? My husband is going to die today. He says, why don't you go to the tzaddik, the Baba Sali? Ask him for a blessing. He can help you. Baba who? What are you talking about? No, my husband's going to die. He says, no, the Baba Sali. I don't know who Baba Sali is. They don't teach us Baba Sali in the kibbutz. He says, the Baba Sali is a tzaddik. He can help you. No, I don't believe in those things. We don't believe in such things. Somebody told us to keep Shabbat. And we've been keeping Shabbat. We don't do anything. We're just in the hospital. But nothing changed. He says, go to the Baba Sali. He can help you. Initially they refused, and then this Jew did them the biggest chesed of their life. He says, you know what? I'm going to take you. But he's going to die today. He says, listen, whether he dies or he doesn't die today, there's nothing you can do about it anyway. You're not stopping the death by being here. Let's just go to the Baba Sali and see what he can do. He takes them to Netivot. When they get to Netivot, they get to the Baba Sali's house, they see a line out the door. The woman is crying. She knows this is going to be forever. The Gabbai sees them. He says, hey, lady, you have to put clothes on. The women were obnoxiously immodest. Literally. Just something like maybe a paper towel was like describing her clothes. She says, lady, you have to put clothes on. No clothes. What clothes? I want to talk to the rabbi. My husband is dying. He says, okay, you can talk, but you have to wait like everybody else. But rabbi can't see you like this. You have to put clothes on, lady. And she's screaming and yelling. No, what clothes? What is this? Are you going to help me or not? The Baba Sali in his Kedusha heard this screaming. He called over his Gabbai. He says, Shuada, what is that? What happening over there? He says, K'vod Harav, there's this woman and her daughter screaming and yelling. They want to get a blessing from the rabbi, but they're not tzanua. They're not tzanua. They're not mothers. Bechlal, rabbi, you can't come in here. He says, okay. You turn me around so I can look at the wall. I can't see them. And you bring them in. So that's what the Gabbai did. He turned the rabbi around. The rabbi was looking at the wall. So you can't see these not modest women. And the women come in. And they start crying and they start telling him how the husband is dying and that today's his last day. And the Baba Sali says to them, you want him to live? Yeah, of course, Rabbi. If you go and you take on, you and your daughter, 100% tzniut, 100% modesty, right now, I promise you that your husband will not only live, he will walk out of the hospital today perfectly healthy. This is just a promise. Can anybody even imagine such a promise? The doctors are saying he's going to die any minute. The rabbi is saying he's going to walk out of the hospital perfectly healthy. Why? Put some clothes on. The woman says, no, but Rabbi, but is there something? We keep Shabbat. We started keeping Shabbat and nothing is happening. He said, no. If you do what I say, you take on 100% modesty, we have a deal. You and your daughter, no modesty, no deal. Agree or no? We don't have much time. She says, okay, fine, we'll do it. Okay. Go to the market now. You and your daughter, go buy modest clothes and come back here. Mitpachat for your head, cover head to toe. Only thing you can see is your face, your hands. That's it. Covered. None of these tight dresses, none of this. Modest. Now, we don't have much time. The woman and her daughter and their friend took them over there right to the market. They went to the shuk over there, they bought some clothes, they came back. Fully dressed. Woman from the kibbutz covering her hair. Like a tzadikah, like Sarah Imenu. The daughter is covered like she's been going to Bet Yaakov seminary her whole life. They're both covered head to toe. They're both tzadikot, kedoshot. You couldn't tell that just an hour ago they were from the kibbutz, walking around like HaShem just created them as babies. Now the Baba Sai says, now I want you to go straight to the hospital. Your husband is waiting for you there. The woman, her daughter, and the same Jewish driver speeding back to the hospital. They're not waiting. They're not taking their time. They're going there as fast as possible. Of course, it took some time, but they got there. As soon as they get to the hospital, Pele Plaut, miracle of miracles, wonder of wonders. She sees her husband, the daughter sees her father sitting on the bed, perfectly healthy, talking to the doctors, and the doctors are all wondering what just happened here. This guy's disconnected from the tubes. He's completely healthy. He's smiling. Initially, the husband couldn't recognize these two women until he realized it's his wife and daughter. He started yelling at them. What are you doing? What is this? I wake up and this is what you wear. You're a shmata? You look like some old lady? Get these clothes off of you. The woman says, no. No. And she starts crying. Baruch mechaya metim, blessed is the one that resurrects the dead. He says, take it off. Take off this clothes. No, we're going home. She goes, I'm not taking it off. I'm going to stay like this. She goes, why? Why are you doing this? She says, the Baba Sali, the tzaddik told me I have to do this. Because who? Baba Sali. Because no, we don't follow those things, those fanatics. She says, now we do. She says, no, I'm going to go talk to him. She says, okay. Let's go now. Okay. They all go. The husband leaves the hospital. The wife, the daughter, the same driver. That Jewish guy had a ride of his life that day. Who doesn't want to miss that? I want to be on that ride. Even though this happened 40 years ago. They're all back in the car. Back to Netivot. Zzz. The Baba Sali is waiting for them. Apparently, he knew they're coming. As soon as they come in, skipping all the lines, go straight to the rabbi. This time the rabbi doesn't have to look at the wall. But the husband comes in and says, listen, Rabbi, listen, I respect you, thank you very much, but this is not for us. This is not for us. We're from the kibbutz. We didn't grow up this way. We don't keep things. If we go back to the kibbutz, my wife and daughter look like this, people are going to make fun of us. They're going to make fun of us. This is a problem for me. No. You have to cancel. Cancel the deal. Cancel. The Baba Sali says to him, dear Jew, Yehudi Yakar, there's no such thing as me canceling the deal. But you can. You can cancel the deal if you want. But before you decide whether to cancel it or not, why don't you ask your wife what she dreamt about on the way from here to the hospital after she wore the modest clothes she drove from here to the hospital. It took a while to get there. She fell asleep in the car while the driver was driving. Ask her, what did she dream about? As soon as the wife heard this, she started shaking. Shaking and tears are falling down her cheeks. The husband says, what happened? How do you know the dream? What did you dream? What is this dream? She says to him, the rabbi knows, because he was there in the dream. What dream? I fell asleep in the car, and I was brought up to the Bet Din of Shamayim, the Jewish court of heaven, and they were deciding on your life. And they said, this man is a Rasha, wicked, he violates Shabbat, doesn't keep mitzvot. His wife and daughter walk around now modest. No tarat mishpacha. Death penalty. And I was crying. I said, please help me. And then all of a sudden, the Baba Sali came. And he said, honorable rabbis, I'm here for this case, and I request that we bring this case to the Bet Din of Shlomo HaMelech. The Baba Sali shows up to the Bet Din of Shamayim. They listen. Say, no problem for the Rav. Let us show you the way to the Bet Din of Shlomo HaMelech. They bring him to the Bet Din of Shlomo HaMelech. And the Baba Sali says to Shlomo HaMelech, you said and wrote with Ruach HaKodesh in your book of Mishlei, Proverbs, in chapter 31, verse 25. You said that Oz ve'adar, that the greatest treasure for a woman is her modesty. V'titzchak b'yom ha'achavon. And if she has this oz ve'adar, she has this modesty, then she will laugh on the last day. What is this last day that she's going to laugh on? She's going to laugh that the doctors, those heretic doctors that said, today is your husband's last day. How can it be the last day if this righteous woman is now modest and her daughter is now modest? How could it be that this is the last day? She will laugh that they said it's the last day, because it's not the last day. Shlomo HaMelech says, I accept your chidush, and I judge this man l'chaim, to life. at that moment, you came back to life. Now you decide if you want to live, the woman that's your wife, the woman that's your daughter, have to continue being oz ve'adar, has to continue being modest, because that's the blessing. But if you don't want it, no problem, no modesty. And instead of her laughing, the doctor says it's the last day, and it's not, she'll be crying because it does become the last day. You choose. The man chose wisely, and his wife became a rebbitzin that was as stringent as can be when it came to modesty, because she knew that if she even slowed down on modesty a little bit, if the elbow all of a sudden she started showing, if all of a sudden instead of a mitpachat it became some wig longer than the exile, instead of being attractive to her husband, she started becoming attracting to the people in the streets. Her husband's life was on the line. She became one to help other women do tshuva, to understand what judgment is, but to also understand the mercy that's available for those that choose wisely. She sacrificed the kumas. She sacrificed Rabotai Karim the machoch. She sacrificed the mirror, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu used it to build the kiyor. HaKadosh Baruch Hu used it to build his house and her home. And he could do the same thing with yours. The question is, what are you willing to sacrifice for Hashem? And even more so, once you've decided to sacrifice something, are you sacrificing sufficiently where you know for sure that what you're sacrificing is enough to put you on the side of the giver, or you're still doing it just for the sake of taking, because your primary focus in life is to take, take, take? These things, Rabotai Karim, are real lessons that apply to every single person. Every one of us tends to judge ourselves too harshly or too loosely. Sometimes we think of ourselves as not good enough at all to do anything good, and sometimes we think of ourselves as much better than what we really are. But when we're judging here, it's much simpler. We don't need to look at so many different factors. You look at how you live your life. Are you generally a giver? Are you giving all you got to sanctify Kadosh Baruch Hu's name, to publicize his name? Are you willing to sacrifice everything for the sake of Hashem? Not just in words, but actually, are you doing it in action? If you're doing it, Ashrecha, B'tov lach. If you're not, you should consider doing it. Why? Because no one ever loses when they sacrifice for the sake of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In fact, the more you give, the more you end up taking, because Hashem gives you so much as a result. With that being said, I hope that every one of us chooses wisely and starts analyzing themselves and where they stand, and then moves accordingly. Now you guys can start asking some questions. BeEzrat HaShem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give us the answers. If you asked questions on YouTube, I could only see the questions for a second. So you have to ask them again. Same thing with TikTok. If you asked, you have to ask again. Thank you, David. You enjoy the shiur. Baruch Hashem. Is there an end of time coming of the Mashiach? As far as there's an end of time, sure there's an end of time. Is it the end of time right now? We've been at the end of days already for a long time. We've been at the end of days for a couple of decades already. The end of days is not just a single day, it's a process. Now, as far as the process, the sages teach that the Mashiach will come before Shabbat. Now, it doesn't mean the day Shabbat, but rather the year Shabbat. So, David HaMelech teaches us that HaShem uses every 1,000 years as symbolic for one of his days. So, with the year being 5,784, that means that we are on Friday, somewhere around 6 p.m. Right now as we speak. So if the average Shabbat throughout the year begins, let's say at 7 o'clock, 7:30, if you're in different parts of the world it could be even later, but generally speaking it's around that 7, that means that we are exactly at that time of before Shabbat. We are at that time of before Shabbat, which means that the Mashiach can show up tomorrow, he can show up in a year from now, in 10 years from now, but needless to say, it's in our lifetime. Assuming everybody has a full lifetime, it's in our lifetime. But the key is to make sure that instead of focusing on when Mashiach comes, we have to be more focused on preparing for whenever the Mashiach comes. We're already prepared right there and then, because the opportunity we have right now is to do tshuva before Mashiach comes. Because once Mashiach comes, it's not going to be the same opportunity as we have right now. And that's why it says, and we say it in our prayers throughout the week, Uba leTzion Goel Shaveh Pesha B'Yaakov, that the Goel, the Mashiach, will come to bring salvation to those that used to be push'im, used to be spiritual criminals, used to waste seed, used to walk around not modest, used to be stingy, used to have a lot of time wasted instead of learning Torah. So when people do tshuva, they become part of the people that will get the salvation that Mashiach will bring to the world. But there's also other parts that has to happen, which is there has to be a war. The war of Gog and Magog, as the prophet Zechariah in chapter 14 and also the prophet Ezekiel in chapter 38 both discuss in detail of this last war. And the last war is not a single war, but rather a series of wars. The war of Gog and Magog is not a single war, but a series of war where the ultimate culmination or end of that war is something that will take, according to the Gaon Vilna, less than 10 minutes. But the point being is that this war of Gog and Magog is going to be a war where 2/3 of the world will die instantly, and the other third, only part of it will survive. The Mashiach will fight against all of the enemies of Am Yisrael, all of the enemies of the Torah. Some of those enemies will be Gentiles, some of those enemies will be Jews, which are the Erev Rav. And none of the enemies will survive. They're all going to be annihilated without the Mashiach lifting a weapon, without the Mashiach throwing a bomb, but rather beruach piv yamit rasha, with the speech, with the speech that comes out of his mouth, the air that comes out of his mouth, he'll destroy the wicked. So all of the bunkers and the weapons and the bombs and the planes, all of that stuff is not tools that are necessary for the Mashiach or necessary for you to save yourself. The way that each and every single person can save themselves for the time of when Mashiach comes, and the process of Mashiach arriving is by doing tshuva, spiritually focusing, rather than materially focusing. Meaning that you have to utilize every tool that you have to serve Hashem and to get yourself closer to Hashem, to do tshuva, to be modest, to be somebody that learns Torah, somebody that follows Torah, committed, to be honest, to be generous, to fix your bad character traits, all of these different things that the Torah says, you have to start taking them on, and little by little, get yourself into a situation where you're constantly looking for more mitzvot. You know, there's a time where a person has to take big leaps to take on big mitzvot, and there are times that a person can take small steps. Now, what's the difference? When it comes to the prohibitions, meaning things that are forbidden, you have to take big steps. There's no such thing as small steps. There's no such thing as small steps of violating Shabbat. You have to right away take a big step and keep the whole Shabbat and not violate it, at least not knowingly. There's no such thing as small steps of protecting your BEIT or your modesty. Either you're protecting the BEIT and you're modest, or you're not protecting your BEIT and you're not modest. Now, of course, there's going to be failures along the way, but at the very least, the effort is 100%. The effort is 100%. So when it comes to the prohibitions, it must be big steps. When it comes to the positive mitzvot of doing things, whether it's giving charity or it's doing any positive mitzvah, that you could take smaller steps. You could take smaller steps. But the negative mitzvot, meaning the prohibitions, that must be big steps. Must be big steps. Stay away from making big sins. Stay away from hurting people, stealing from people, being dishonest, causing people to sin. All of those things, you have to take the big step and do it ASAP. That way you'll be utilizing this time that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving us before the Mashiach arrives. And don't harp so much on the timing of Mashiach, whether he's coming now or next week or next year or 10 years from now or 5 years from now. Don't, because you want as much time as possible, because you need to do as much tshuva as possible, learn as much Torah as possible to be the most prepared you possibly can be for when he eventually comes. The people that typically are focused on specific days of when Mashiach comes are so bent out of shape because of this obsession that they forget about doing tshuva. They forget about doing tshuva in some critical parts. So it's more important to focus on the tshuva and not on the date the Mashiach comes. But certainly the Mashiach is coming. We just have to do as much as we can to prepare for him. And since we don't know whether he's going to come, tomorrow or a year from now or whenever it is, we have to take advantage of whatever time we have to do the best we can. BeEzrat HaShem, because we could, chas v'shalom, be in that same case as that woman where there was one day to live. And we don't want to have just one day. We need as much time as possible. Is there anything to be excited about Mashiach ben Yosef? Sure, it's part of the salvation. It's part of the salvation that the Gemara in Masechet Sukkah says the Mashiach ben Yosef is going to come and he's going to fight against the enemies of Am Yisrael. If we are righteous enough and we pray, he will survive those wars and protect Am Yisrael. If we don't, then chas v'shalom, he could die. So Mashiach ben Yosef is certainly something that's good, it's a blessing, and it's part of the prophecy of the salvation at the end of times. Is there any real makor, or if you make 3 matches, you have Gan Eden? I looked into this some time ago. Somebody asked me the same question, and we couldn't find any makor for it, for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's not something that really could even guarantee somebody Gan Eden, because if a person violates Shabbat, it doesn't matter what mitzvot they do, they have no share of the world to come. If a person's an idol worshiper, even if they helped 1,000 people get married, they're still going to Gehinnom forever. So the Torah can't promise senseless things like making matches, and therefore a person's going to go to heaven. It's just not It's just not. It's not something that's a Torah. It's not a mitzvah that's obligation or anything like that. It's nice if you could help people get married and they're going to live a kosher life together. But if you're making matches between people that are violating the Torah, it's not even a mitzvah. It's actually a sin. Does the Mashiach have to reign for 214 years? No. Talk more about the cash advance. I have at least a half a dozen lectures about the cash advance business. It's and a person can watch those lectures. There's many sources from the Torah, from the prophets, from the writings, from the Gemara, the oral Torah, the written Torah, from the Zohar that discuss this predatory business and how much damage it's caused Am Yisrael over the centuries. It's always been a thorn in our side as a nation when Jewish people get into the lending business, even though HaKadosh Baruch Hu prohibited it between Jews and Jews, and even prohibited it between Jews and non-Jews when it's a non-Jew that's is favorable to you, and it's a non-Jew that you're planning on overcharging. These things have never been permitted, but unfortunately, people get blind when it comes to money, and they don't look at the right places. They don't learn the right things, and they end up making critical mistakes that not only cause damage to other people, but it causes damage to anyone that's involved in it, and anyone that is benefiting from the cash advance business is going to end up losing much more than they've ever gained. Much more than they've ever gained. That's why when people tell me, I've had guys from the cash advance business that have watched my lectures contact me and ask questions and so on. Some of them have actually been nice people that ended up leaving the cash advance business. Some of them are too addicted to it and stayed in, but they're trying to do good things and think hopefully that's going to help them, which it's not. But some of them have really been obnoxious. Either way, some of them, the ones that are in the middle, have asked me, Rabbi, so since you're so against the cash advance business, is it okay if I donate to you? And I always tell them, please don't donate $1 to me. If it's coming from the cash advance business, please don't donate that money to me. I don't want you to donate a single penny to our organization if it's coming from there. If it's coming from something else, you made money in real estate, you made money in the stock market, you made money from a different business that's kosher, no problem. But if you made money from the cash advance business, please do not donate. Don't destroy the kedusha that our organization has with your impure money. We don't want any of it. And all of the people that are benefiting from it, even the ones that are receiving donations from it, knowingly that it's coming from there, and they're not telling people to leave that business, they'll also end up losing. They're also going to end up losing. It's not just the wicked people that are making the money by doing this. It's also the people that are benefiting from it. Because sometimes when these types of people that are in crooked businesses, they have like a conscience that's calling them, telling them to maybe stop. They silence that conscience when they see that the rabbi or other types of leaders within the community are respecting them and accepting their support without saying anything bad about it. They feel like, if it was so bad, they would say something. And since they're not only not saying anything, they're actually, encouraging me to donate even more, then they feel like they're not doing anything bad. So that's why they become partners to the crime. They become partners to the crime, and eventually they'll get punished also. And this is going to be a tragedy, but somebody goes against God, that's what happens. A few of you that are asking for blessings, the blessings need to be complemented with a mitzvah that the person is taking on. If the person is willing to take on Shabbat, willing to take on modesty, willing to take on protecting their BEIT, then I'm more than happy to bless them. As Rabbeinu V'Moreno Rabbi Ephraim does, this is the only way that the blessing can have real power for it to be fulfilled. But for me to just give you a blessing without you taking anything on, it's unfortunately insufficient. Is one allowed to lie on their back while they're reading? If you're talking about a Jewish male is not allowed to lie on their back, period. Could bring a person to sin, intentionally, unintentionally. If you're talking about a Jew while they're reading Torah, they shouldn't be lying down at all. They should be sitting or standing, but if they're tired and or they're reading something before they're going to sleep, they can lie down, but they shouldn't be lying down in such a way where it's like it's inappropriate. They could sit down in their bed and read, but I've been reading for a long time. I've never really met anybody that can successfully read something meaningful while lying on their back. It's just not, unless again that's a position that they already got used to over many years because of sickness and things like that. Is tikkun klali a tikkun for zera levatala? Okay, so I've answered this question many times. First, I would recommend anyone that is still wasting seed or still hasn't done the tikkunim to watch the film Tikkun BEIT. It's a film that we made. It has over 100 sources that are quoted on the screen and shown. Of different things that it's stated about the issues of immorality, wasting seed, and so on. It's a very, very powerful film that has helped countless people do tshuva for this problem. And one of the things that I mentioned in the film towards the end is how do you do tshuva for tikkun BEIT, and there are different things that help a person. And one of the things that I explain is that the Rabbi Nachman of Breslev's tikkun klali was never stated as a actual tikkun for wasting seed. It doesn't fix the wasted seed that happened the day before or a year before, but rather the tikkun klali, which is a series of psalms that a person can and should read, is supposed to inspire the person's heart to do tshuva for wasting seed. It's not tshuva itself, it's not a repentance itself, it's not a tikkun itself, but rather it's supposed to inspire a person to do a tikkun, to actually do tshuva for this and stop wasting seed and do things that are going to keep them away from it. But it's not an actual rectification in itself. Whoever thinks that it is simply incorrect. That's not what Rabbi Nachman Bresler wrote. How do you keep Shabbat the right way? Okay, so the first thing that a person needs to know is that they must learn the laws of Shabbat. Without learning the laws of Shabbat, a person is never going to be able to keep Shabbat the right way. The first thing that a person needs to know is what's forbidden on Shabbat. The main things that are forbidden are the 39 melachot, which is 39 activities that a person is forbidden from doing, such as you're not allowed to drive, you're not allowed to turn on or off fire, i.e. also electricity. Whatever is on, you leave on. Your electricity that's on, you leave on. But also, you're not allowed to cook on Shabbat, you're not allowed to work on Shabbat, like do business. So there are certain things that a person needs to know as far as what's forbidden, and obviously stay away from that. Then there's the things that a person needs to do. So the first thing is to prepare for Shabbat, not just on Friday, but also take parts of the preparation for Shabbat throughout the whole week. Don't leave Shabbat preparation for just the last couple of hours before Shabbat. You should do the shopping for Shabbat already earlier part of the week. If you need to buy something last minute, that's fine. But as far as the main shopping should already begin towards the beginning of the week. You should already have something of a plan of what you're going to eat, where you're going to eat, if you're going to eat home, if you're going to eat somebody else's house. You should have no stinginess whatsoever when it comes to Shabbat. You should splurge on Shabbat. And the things you buy for Shabbat should be the best. Don't try to save a couple of dollars on one challah over the other. Buy the best challah. Don't try to save money on buying this $10 wine or versus this $15 wine. Whatever you spend on Shabbat, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will pay you back. So be generous on Shabbat. The more generous you are, the more blessing it is. Third thing is you have to prepare for Shabbat, where you have to obviously look the part, wear clothes that you don't wear during the week. You should have a special outfit that you only wear on Shabbat. For women, this is certainly a favorite mitzvah for you. You should wear outfits on Shabbat that you don't wear the rest of the week. Not even outfits that you wear to go to weddings or something. Wear just Shabbat outfit that you should have. Same thing for men. There should be a suit that you wear, garment that you wear on Shabbat that you don't wear the rest of the week. So that's same thing with shoes. Shoes that you only wear on Shabbat. If you wear a hat that you only wear on Shabbat. Special clothes just for Shabbat. Of course, preparation, hygiene, you take a shower. If a person wants to groom his beard, if he doesn't have a beard or he doesn't grow a beard, then to groom his face, obviously don't shave with a razor. That's forbidden according to the Torah. But the point is, a person should look like $1 million showing up to Shabbat, fully groomed, fully happy, and also completely disconnected from work. Completely disconnected. Don't talk about work. Don't think about work. Pretend as if all of your problems have been solved. When you show up to Shabbat, you're showing up as if you're showing up to Gan Eden. Why? Because if you accept the Shabbat in the right way, the Shabbat accepts you. And you're going to have certain feelings on Shabbat that are unlike the rest of the week. But if you treat Shabbat like it's just a day off from work, you're not going to enjoy Shabbat and you're not going to have those feelings. So it's important for a person to prepare for Shabbat already beforehand. Same thing with the rest of the house, but also it shouldn't be like high pressure craziness where the husband yells at everybody because they're not ready on time, or the mother's yelling at the kids because they're taking too long, or she's yelling at her husband because he forgot to buy something. No fighting. No fighting before Shabbat, and certainly no fighting on Shabbat. Anyone that fights on Shabbat should know they will be turning Gehenom on for themselves. The fire of Gehenom turns on when somebody's fighting on Shabbat, and eventually that fire will be used for that person. The person that gets angry on Shabbat, it's considered as if they turned on fire on Shabbat. Do not get angry on Shabbat. Somebody is upsetting you, walk away. If you can't get over it, walk away, and don't express your anger with yelling and screaming and all that stuff. Absolutely no anger on Shabbat, no fighting on Shabbat. You can't come to terms with somebody, stop talking to them. Stop talking to them unless you can work on yourself and simply not get angry. But either way, no anger on Shabbat. Another thing is, you should always get your wife something for Shabbat, a flower, or maybe something nice. Get your kids also something nice. If there's a time to get your kids some type of present, obviously it doesn't have to be expensive stuff. It could be something small. It could be a book. It could be whatever it is, but something that's certainly related to Kedusha. But you should give always giving. Give your wife some flowers. If she doesn't like flowers, then buy her some chocolates that she likes. Or if she doesn't like chocolates, she doesn't like flowers, then whatever that she does like, get her something. Be generous on Shabbat. Be generous. Give it to obviously before Shabbat starts. Same thing with your kids. Start off the Shabbat with giving. Start off the Shabbat with giving. We have a custom, Baruch Hashem, in our house before Shabbat. If everybody was good, kids get usually a book before Shabbat. Everybody gets a little book that they have the chance to read it on the Shabbat. Obviously, if they don't finish, they read over time. But the point is, that's the time that we utilize to give presents. Many people celebrate birthdays. They celebrate the fact that they got older. Not really sure why that's exactly such a celebration. It's not forbidden to celebrate a birthday, but again, I'm not really sure what is exactly the celebration. But if you're celebrating Shabbat, you're celebrating holidays, Jewish holidays, you're celebrating Rosh Chodesh, you're celebrating days that HaKadosh Baruch Hu decreed as important days, that's okay, now I understand. You use that day to give a present, I understand. Use that date to celebrate, I understand. Why? Because you have sages that have discussed this throughout the last several thousand years. You're celebrating a birthday, and that's the opportunity. Why you're going to buy your wife something? I don't know. The only one that celebrated the birthday in the Torah is Paro and Nebuchadnezzar, two Reshaim. So, if you are looking to be a giver, if you're looking to be closer to HaShem, you should use Shabbat. You should use the Jewish holidays as opportunities to give. Meaning, your wife doesn't have one birthday. She has a birthday every week. Now, you don't have to buy her a diamond ring every week unless you're, very extremely wealthy. But certainly you should be generous. Certainly you should be generous to your wife, to your kids, obviously with tact and with reason. And again, if all you buy your wife is jewelry, but you never give her your time, you never learn Torah, then that gift will turn into a curse. If all you buy your kids is toys, but you don't really care about whether they're learning Torah and whether they prioritize Torah, then that blessing that you're giving them will turn into a curse. So everything has to be done within reason, with a Torah mindset. But the point being is that this is something that if you have the ability to do it, do it. If you don't have the ability, no problem. Obviously, the candle lighting should be a family thing. It shouldn't be just your wife going to the corner and nobody knows what's going on, nobody really cares, everybody's minding their business. If you have the opportunity to do it, be part of her blessing when she accepts the Shabbat. Of course, if you have a good shul in your community, you must go to shul, go pray. After you pray, come back home with the two angels that are coming to bring a blessing to the house. If the house was prepared like I said, then those two angels will both bless your house. The good angel will bless your house and the bad angel will say Amen. But if you didn't do any of the preparation and you showed up to Shabbat, you didn't even have time to take a shower, your wife is still wearing her flip-flops, she still has a towel on her head, she barely even sure if she lit the Shabbat candles on time or was already Shabbat, then the bad angel will curse, and unfortunately the good angel will say Amen to that. So be prepared for Shabbat before Shabbat. Before Shabbat. Another thing I would recommend is your primary focus on Shabbat is your immediate family, meaning your wife and kids, your husband and kids. Don't make Shabbat a time to host the whole world, especially if it gets in the way of you connecting to your wife or your husband, you connecting to your kids. I know that people like to have guests, but many times guests make a person forget about who is the most important, which is his spouse and children. Spouse and children are priority. So if you spend more than enough time with your spouse and children throughout the week, you want to have guests also, no problem. But if you don't see your spouse during the week and this is your time to spend, don't bring guests to your house. Same thing with your family, your mother, your father, your brothers, sisters. Don't go to your brothers and sisters and your mother every week. It's better for you to have some time with just your spouse and kids. It's nice to see family, but if it's too much, it creates problems. It creates shalom bayit problems. It creates a lot of difficulties. I know that some people say, no, but we go there every week. Okay, you may like it because it's your parents, but I bet you your husband doesn't like it, or your wife doesn't like it. It's not his family. Oh no, he doesn't say anything. Yeah, he doesn't say anything, but he's suffering silently. It's not healthy for a relationship for you guys to spend all of the holy days with other people and never alone. Now again, I'm not saying never go, but you can go once a month, but certainly a couple times a month, but certainly you should spend some time between the couple and their children. Another thing is also make learning Torah the top priority of Shabbat, meaning that you obviously have your family, you have a festive meal, splurge on the meal, eat, enjoy, but also make sure you have something to say on your Shabbat table to your kids. Don't just be a pig and eat. Have something to say about Torah that you learned, not just something that you learned 2 minutes before Shabbat started. Prepare for it during the week. Have the kids say something. If the wife has something to say, that's also good, but it shouldn't be the wife over everybody else. The husband is priority. If the wife is the main one that's speaking on Shabbat, usually that's a problematic home. So it's very, very important for the husband to teach Shabbat, to teach Torah in the house. Also for the kids to be involved. Don't just make the kids talk and not the parents. Priority is the parents, and then the kids follow. If the kids become the parents, then who's the parents? Then it becomes a mess. A lot of times people have the Dvar Torah only said by the kids. This is not good. Why? Because the kids, they're telling you something and they're enjoying it, but they're not getting chinuch. Chinuch is taught by the parents' teachings. This is the time to do it. Obviously, study Torah with them. Read a book out loud for them to hear. Read the parashat together. Read Sipurei Tzadikim. Learn Torah together, and of course, you learn Torah alone also. But it's important for a person to spend some time with the family and some time studying on their own, depending on the makeup of the family. If it's not possible to be away from the family, then study with the family. But it should never be that Shabbat is only about eating and sleeping. Eating is good, sleeping is good, but studying Torah is critical in order for you to enjoy the Shabbat. Without learning Torah on Shabbat, you're not going to be able to enjoy the Shabbat. It's going to turn into just another day off, almost like a vacation, but not a spiritual vacation. Another thing that go on Shabbat, if there's a shiur in your community, go to the shiur Torah. If it's a good speaker, good rabbi, if you have something to say, you should give a shiur. It's certainly a time to learn Torah, to pray, to eat, to spend time with family. Of course, if you have kids, spend some time with them. There's a lot of different ways to spend some time. Do not play sports on Shabbat. Don't play sports on Shabbat. Don't exercise on Shabbat. Don't do the things that you can do during the other 6 days of the week. Don't talk business on Shabbat. There are certain things that are outright forbidden, and there are certain things that may not be forbidden, but they're still not recommended. So there's a person needs to know that it's not just about keeping Shabbat as far as not lighting fire, but it's also oneg Shabbat, meaning making the Shabbat holy and enjoyable and glamorous. Shabbat should be your favorite day of the year. That means that every week you're celebrating Shabbat. The more you celebrate Shabbat, the happier you will be as a servant of Hashem, as a Jew, as a person. As far as if you are going to have guests on Shabbat, you have to be careful with who you have as guests. You have to be careful with who you have as guests. I understand that people like to invite their friends and family on Shabbat, and that's nice as long as those people that you're inviting on Shabbat, especially since they're going to be next to your kids, as long as they're not heretics. Don't invite heretics to your house on Shabbat. You want to invite somebody to do kiruv with them, not on Shabbat. Do it on different days. Do it one-on-one. Why? Because if that person is a heretic, is an idol worshiper, he comes to your house and he starts saying stupid things that are against the Torah, that could influence your kids in a negative way. So you have to be very, very careful. You have to be very careful who you invite to your house on Shabbat. As far as prayers, it's best to pray early if possible, but if you can't, pray whenever you can. There's the early minyans, there's the later minyans, but nonetheless, pray throughout the Shabbat. Make sure that you have the 3 meals during Shabbat. You have the Shabbat on Friday night after you come back from shul. To check what time Shabbat comes in, you have to check your local times. There's many applications and websites that will tell you what time Shabbat comes in your area. Once Shabbat comes in, that's that's when you're not allowed to do all of the prohibitions of driving and fire and cooking and so on. As far as heating food, you're allowed to heat food if it's a solid food, and if it's just heating it but not cooking it. So, for example, soup. If you put the soup on a hot plate, before Shabbat, it's fine for it to continue heating throughout the Shabbat. But once you take it off as a Sephardi Jew, that's it. You can't put it back on the hot plate later on or the next day. But if it's a solid food, like most of the time, chulent for most people is mostly solid, or meat or chicken or any of those foods. Those as long as they're already cooked, you could heat them up, whenever you want. So you have to know the details. And that's why I also recommend for people to learn the laws. There's plenty of books that you can learn the laws from. For people that are beginners for keeping Shabbat, I recommend children's books. Don't buy adult books as your first book to keep Shabbat. Okay, if you're just starting to keep Shabbat, don't buy adult books to keep Shabbat. Buy children's books that teach how to keep Shabbat. Why? Because the children's books also come with pictures and they come with easier explanations. That's going to help you in the beginning. I understand that some people have too much of an ego and think that it's not good. You're incorrect. It's many times people think that they're keeping Shabbat for 5, 10, 20 years based on what they read in the books, but they don't realize that they misunderstood it. And had they actually learned it with a rabbi or someone that knows what they're talking about, or even just seen it from a book with a picture, they would know it all along. But many times people are too arrogant to grow spiritually. So there's no room for arrogance in the servitude of Hashem. Next, person needs to, after there's the Friday night meal, try to leave yourself some room and energy to learn later on that night. Obviously get some rest. Then you pray in the morning. After you pray, you have the second kiddush with the family. Don't delay. Meaning, after you pray on Friday, don't spend time at the synagogue to learn before you go home. Go straight home. Go straight home and have the kiddush right away. On Saturday morning when you pray, depending on which minyan you prayed. If you prayed there early in that minyan, then and no one's waiting for you, then you could learn for a little bit before you go home to do kiddush. But if the family's waiting for you, don't make them wait. Go straight home, do the kiddush. You want to learn, you learn after you eat. That's the lunch. After that, obviously, you spend some time with the family. You learn a little bit. You want to rest a little bit. If you need it, you can. If you learn a lot of Torah throughout the whole week, then you can use Shabbat as a time that you could also rest more than learn. But if you work most of the week and your main time to learn is on Shabbat, no resting on Shabbat, just studying. Don't take a 2-hour nap on Shabbat if your only time to study Torah is on Shabbat. You've been sleeping the whole week already. So after you have the second meal, you study, you hang out with the kids, hang out with the wife, hang out with the husband, all that good stuff. Then you have Sudah Shlishit. Sudah Shlishit should be also a festive meal, but some people have a bigger meals. Some people have smaller meals. Either way, it's good to have bread with every one of the meals. Every one of the meals you have some bread, but don't have just a tiny little bite that's not fulfilling the halacha. Make sure that you take the right quantity of bread and you eat it. After you have the third meal, then of course, shortly after the third meal, then you have the Motzei Shabbat. Now, Shabbat is still not over, even though you've done Avdalah, and at the synagogue, and then you have to do Avdalah at the house if you have people at the house. Shabbat is technically over as far as the Shabbat, but you still have the part of the Shabbat observance to do after Shabbat, which is Seudah Revi'it, the fourth meal. The fourth meal is not a suggestion. The fourth meal, you need to have it, and it should be something new. If it's not possible for you to have something new, you can't afford it, you simply don't have, whatever it is, okay, but you have to have a fourth meal. Now, the fourth meal, you don't have to have right after Shabbat. You can have it even 2 hours, 3 hours after Shabbat, but you should have a fourth meal, and it should be a new meal. It doesn't have to be, a four-course meal. You could have brand new pasta with some sauce. You could have, pizza. You could have, whatever it is that you like, but it should be new. Shouldn't necessarily be the stuff that you already ate on Shabbat. That's the fourth meal. Fourth meal is also brings a special blessing for a person. A lot of blessings come as a result of the fourth meal. This was instituted by David HaMelech. Either way, now you have finished the fourth meal, and now it's time for you to already start preparing the next Shabbat. The next Shabbat. So whether it's shopping, preparing, all that good stuff, every week, every day a little bit of some thoughts, some preparations for Shabbat. If you do that, if you make your priority to learn Torah, to bring Kedusha to your house on Shabbat, your Shabbat will truly be holy. And BeEzrat HaShem, all of us will have a holy Shabbat. Okay, maybe another 1 or 2 questions, and then we're done for the day. Okay, in regards to lights on Shabbat, if you are very conscious of your spending and and the meter of your lights and so on, now first off, obviously we're not allowed to turn on or turn off lights on Shabbat ourselves. But if you're very conscious about spending, or you're very conscious about certain lights being on or off at specific times, then you can get what's called Shabbat timers, which is programming the light to turn on or off at specific times before Shabbat. But this is specifically for lights. It's not for you to turn on and off your car, or turn on and off your television. This is for lights. You can use Shabbat timers for that. Yes, but as long as you program it before Shabbat. Some people are not so conscious on these things, and they just leave things on or leave things off. And that's how I am. I don't have a Shabbat timer. I never had a Shabbat timer in any of the houses that I've lived in. If we want something on, we leave it on. If we want it off, we leave it off. If we forget, we forget. But the point is, I'm not so particular about those things. I know some people are. They want their kitchen on at specific times and the dinner area at specific times. I'm not so precise with those things myself. Quite frankly, it's not something that would fit my lifestyle. If I want to, if I'm already going to be in my house trying to enjoy myself, I don't want to have any limitations that I can only be in this room at this specific time. So if I want something on, I leave it on the whole Shabbat. If I want something off, I leave it off. That's it. But again, you want to be more particular, you want to invest the money and time into getting your Shabbat clocks, there's no problem with it, as long as you know what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do. Now, one thing also a person needs to be careful of is sensors that are turned on by movement. Okay, if it turns on or off as a result of time, meaning it reaches a specific time and that's why it turns on, that's fine. But if it's turned on by movement, that's a problem. If you have one of these lights in your house or outside of your house, where every time you pass by it, it turns on, you have to turn that thing off or keep it on the whole Shabbat. You have to turn off the sensor. either that light is on the whole Shabbat or off the whole Shabbat. The sensor is a problem. Now, if you know that your neighbor or somebody else has one of these lights, and every time you pass by their house, the light turns on, that's not your problem. It's okay. But if it's your light, then you have to either turn it on or turn it off. The sensor has to be turned off for Shabbat. Now, as far as the lights inside your house, again, you have a Shabbat clock, that's not a problem. That's not a problem. Another person is asking, is it an obligation for us to teach the Christians Torah? No, it's not an obligation for us to teach the Christians Torah. It's an obligation for us to teach the Jews Torah. Now, once we teach all of the Jews Torah, then we will be obligated to also teach the rest of the world. Now, if the non-Jews can learn while we're teaching the Jews, then no problem. Meaning, if I give a lecture, certainly a part of my crowd is Jewish and part of my crowd is not Jewish. There's no problem with that. Why? Because I'm teaching for the Jews to listen. But if a non-Jew wants to come and join us too, no problem, more than welcome to. But I can't make a lecture just for non-Jews. I can't make a lecture just for non-Jews. As a rabbi, I'm not allowed to do that. Now, if a Jew understands the laws of teaching Torah, they know that their priority is to teach Jews, not to teach non-Jews. This is the mistake that many of these organizations are making, where they prioritize teaching non-Jews Torah, like these Noahide organizations, where they have special classes for non-Jews. This is a mistake. It's a mistake. It's actually forbidden, according to many of the poskim, which include Rav Ovadia Yosef, Rav Auerbach, and several other chachamim that have spoken extensively about this. There's no permission to do such a thing. Your obligation is to teach Jews. If the non-Jew shows up, wants to learn, no problem. It's their decisions. But it's as far as to teach the Christians, again, if the Christian wants to show up online and turn on or play on my lecture, I don't have a problem with it. Enjoy. Hopefully they do tshuva, they abandon idolatry, and even convert to Judaism. It's fantastic. But for me to go make a lecture just for Christians or just for Muslims or just for righteous Noahides is not allowed. That's not something that's allowed. In fact, I said this in one lecture about a year or two ago, and one of these so-called Noahide organizations contacted me, or they made a public comment that, how could I be saying things? They're a holy organization. How could I be speaking against them? And I told them, because you're doing things that are against the halacha. No, what are you talking about? Show me one chacham that says such a thing. Well, I showed them a few. They didn't respond after that because they realized that they're wrong. But if they admit that they're wrong, they have to shut down their organization. So again, it's important to a person to know that we have no problem being a light to the nations, but that's after we are a light to ourselves first. Once we fulfill our obligation to be a light to ourselves, to our own people, then we could also be light to others. And in fact, the more you are a light to our own nation, the more we become a light to the nations. Okay. My niece is in her 30s and she's seriously looking to get married. She's apprehensive to date men who are divorced. Is this correct? If she's never been married and she's afraid to marry a person that was divorced, I can understand her apprehension. But if the only issue with the man is that he's divorced, then it's a mistake. If he's a righteous man, he learns Torah, he's a good-hearted person, he's generous. And the only thing that he has a divorce on his record. That doesn't necessarily make him a bad candidate. But if he has certain baggage she doesn't want, then even if he's not divorced, then she shouldn't go with him. But divorce by itself is not necessarily a red flag to stay away from. No. I know some people in my community who do not have mezuzot on their doorposts. Some of them put it behind the door because they seem afraid of anti-Semitism. How can I convince them to get mezuzot? Can they start with putting it in the front door? Is this enough spiritual protection for the home and the family? As far as having mezuzot, they have to have mezuzot. If they want to put it on the inside part of their door, but still on the mashkof, there's no problem. They can put it on the inside part of the door. It doesn't have to be on the outside part of the door. It just needs to be on the mashkof. But if they don't have it at all, then that's certainly a problem. Can they start by putting one mezuzah instead of putting 5 or 10 mezuzot like they need if they have that many rooms? Sure, they can start with one, but it's they certainly need more. It's one is better than 0, but it's still not enough. You can't pretend like it's fulfilling the obligation. The obligation is to put a mezuzah on every door in your house, aside from places that like the bathroom or the bath or closets, but every door, and it requires a mezuzah. Can a Kohen be a doctor? Yes, a Kohen can be a doctor, but they have to be careful when it comes to specific types of medicine. Not all medicine is the same. The Torah describes temple offering as a pleasing fragrance to HaShem. I'm intrigued by the insights behind this. How can an average person understand the concept? Well, they simply have to read what Rashi says. And Rashi explains the fragrance to HaShem means that they are doing the will of HaShem, and it's pleasing to HaShem that His nation is doing His will, just like good smell is pleasing to a person. If I make $2,000 from a job and I have to pay my employees, do I give 10% from the $2,000 or do I take 10% after I pay my employees? Well, if you are an owner of a business, there are certain expenses that are a must, like paying your employees. But at the same token, if a person pays all of their expenses, then they're not going to be left with anything to give as maaser, meaning that after you pay your employees, let's say you made $2,000 for a job, you pay your employees, by the time you finish, you have $100 left. So your maaser now is going to be $10. Again, it's better than nothing, but one of the things that maaser helps with is emunah, meaning it's not just the mitzvah of giving, but it's also mitzvah of believing. Ideally, it would be from the gross amount, not the net amount. Unless the net amount is significant, meaning you have a very big business. Let's say, for example, a person sold a $500,000 piece of real estate, and out of the $500,000, let's say $200,000 is profit. Now, sure, it would be great if he can give maaser off of the $500,000, but it's not correct. You can still give maaser off of the $200,000 profit because it's still substantial. But if a person gives maaser only off of his net income, since most people in society, especially Western society, live above their means, there is no net amount. Literally, there's no net amount because people pretty much spend more than what they get. That's the reason why everybody's in debt. Most of the time it's debt they can't afford to give back. They buy things they don't need. They're cheap on things they actually do need. And it becomes a cycle where a person usually never has for the things that are necessary in life, like for the sake of Torah. That's why people are never stingy when it comes to vacation. They're never stingy when it comes to buying, clothes that they want. They're never stingy about, different pleasures of life. Where do they become stingy? They become stingy when it comes to holiness. They're stingy on the price of mezuzahs. They're stingy on the price of tefillin. They're stingy on the price of a talit. They're stingy on the price of donations for Torah. They're stingy on the price of books. You know, I had somebody ask me the other day if he can use his Mussar money to pay for his son's Torah books. His son wants a collection of Torah books, and that cost a few $1,000s. And he asked me if he could use his Mussar money for it. Now, the answer is simple, that if you're well off, which in this case I believe the person was, because it's not a big deal for him to spend several $1,000s on the books, then really you shouldn't use your Mussar money for it. This should just simply be, you fulfilling the mitzvah of educating your son. But if you're not well off, okay, you want to use that, use that. Point is that if a person is making, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a month, and instead of writing a check for $4,000 or $5,000 a month to help publicize the Torah, they're trying to use the tuition for yeshiva, the expense of the Torah books, and a few other things as their Mussar money. You're not going to really see the same blessing. You're not going to really see the same blessing. Why? Because it's not just the blessing that you get from the giving. The biggest part of the blessing is also that Mussar teaches a person how to believe in HaShem and know that HaShem is the one that's giving you parnasah. So when a person is constantly looking for ways to lower their Mussar, that means that they're looking at Mussar like a bill. Mussar should not be viewed as a bill. Mussar should be viewed as an investment. That's the money that you have. That 10% or that 20% that you give for the sake of Torah, that's really how much you have. Just like the Abarbanel. The Abarbanel, who was very, very wealthy, was the treasurer for the King of Spain, and then later on, when they were kicked out in the Spanish Inquisition, he became the treasurer for the King of Portugal. He was, Baruch Hashem, destined to be successful monetarily, and obviously he was a giant chacham in Torah. Spiritually, he was the ultimate success. And Abarbanel, one of his haters, went to the king and told him, listen, this guy is stealing from you, Your Highness, because look how rich he is. He has millions of dollars. So of course the king didn't believe it, but he said, let me ask him. So he asked the Abarbanel, how much money do you have? And the Abarbanel told him a specific amount. And the king knew that there's no way that it's this amount. It's much more, because just the house was worth more than this amount. So he got so angry that he put the Abarbanel in jail. After a few days, he came to the Abarbanel, he respected him, he said, how come you lied to me? He told me that you only have, let's just say 100,000, when I know that just your house is worth $1 million. He said, Your Highness, I didn't lie to you. It's just that your perspective and my perspective are different. You're looking at how much money do I have by viewing the possessions. I'm telling you the money that I really have is not those possessions. Why? Because look, in 1 second you took away all those possessions. You thought I lied to you, you put me in jail, you took my house, you took the property, you took the jewelry, you took everything. So it's not really mine. If it's mine, no one can take it from me. And therefore I said that the only thing that's mine is the money that I already gave in tzedakah, that I already donated. That's my money. Because no one can take that away from me. And I told you the total amount of money that I've donated. The king respected him again and said, I didn't know, I should have known, should have patience. So a person should look at giving Mussar, giving that 10%, or if they're, if they're willing to even give 20% based on their gross. But again, it's it's something that you have to look at as a perspective, where you look at it that it is an investment, not an expense. Not an expense. Sometimes there are certain people that can hear 100 lectures about Mussar but still not give even 1%. Why? Because they're just they have a spiritual sickness. So the way to solve that problem is by giving a little bit at a time. That's why I recommend everyone that's watching that if you did the check that we discussed earlier today about whether you're a giver or a taker, and you find yourself to be a taker, my recommendation is take, let's say, I don't know, $50, $100, whatever it is that's depending on your income. Let's say, let's take, 1% of your income, 5% of your income, whatever it is, and sign up for monthly, automatic monthly donations. So let's just say, argument's sake, $100 a month. $100 a month, automatically put it on, go on the website and sign up to give $100 a month. Now, even though this is nowhere near the 10% that you're supposed to give, and definitely not the 20%, and it's not even 5%, it's probably not even 1%. But at the very least, if you give $100 a month, and it becomes automatic, now even though you're viewing it currently as a bill, because you're earning the mitzvah, and I'm hoping you continue learning Torah with us, little by little, you're going to start liking to give. Little by little, you're going to start liking to give, and before you know it, you're going to want to give more than just $100. But if you're one of those people that says, no, I'm not going to give now, a little bit at a time, I'm going to wait until I have a lot more, guess what? You're never going to give. Not only you're not going to give more, you're never going to give, period. Why? Because you're giving the Satan too much room over your heart. Too much control over your heart. So the best thing to do is to start with giving a small amount every month. Some people I recommend, they make money regularly, like on, I recommend for them to give money every week. Depends on the person. Depends on the person, but either way, a person should have it as an automatic thing. Automatic thing that you're giving, because that is one way that you can fight the Satan that's trying to convince you not to give. Thank you for the shield. Is short selling foreign currency allowed? Is it allowed? According to the Torah, it's allowed. It's not a prohibition or anything like that. You just have to make sure that you know what you're doing. Shorting currency is not, or shorting anything is not for the faint of heart. You could lose a whole lot more than you could possibly make. So you have to be careful. How do we explain when the Torah mentions several people that live many more years than the rest of mankind, but we don't accept accounts of others who claim to live in other periods, not corresponding to their historical record? I don't exactly understand the question. As far as if the Torah says that people lived for many hundreds of years, there's no problem with it. The Torah says it, it's true. As far as other people are saying that they lived a long life, we don't necessarily reject it. If they say they lived 100 years or 200 years, fine, let them live 500 years. What do I care? There's no prohibition of believing them or not believing them of what they say. I'm not really sure what you're saying here. Could you explain the difference between redemption and salvation? And also, if you get Olam Haba with either. Well, the redemption and salvation can be used synonymously to a certain extent. It's when the Mashiach comes, those that are righteous will be redeemed, meaning they'll be able to see the enemies destroyed, and they'll be able to see the blessings being given. Those that are wicked will be destroyed. In fact, 40 years later, there's the resurrection of the dead, where both the righteous and the wicked will be resurrected. The righteous will be rewarded, and the wicked will be punished. And part of their punishment is that they'll be resurrected to see the reward of the righteous and then destroyed again. Now, as far as the ultimate salvation that the righteous people get is they get some of them will have the merit to see Mashiach. Some of them will have the merit to be resurrected. Some of them will have the merit to go and live in this world for that last 1,000 years, from the year 6,000 to 7,000. And then there's certainly Olam Haba. As far as if one gets this, does one get that? Not necessarily. Some will get one, well, not the other. So it depends. It's a case-by-case basis, but too extensive for today to go into. Do the laws of modesty apply to non-Jewish women too? Not to the same extent as Jews, but certainly a non-Jewish woman should be modest because she could be enticing Jews to sin as a result of her lack of modesty. Is it ethical for a single woman to become pregnant via artificial insemination? Ethical? Why doesn't she get a husband? There's nothing. It's not a matter of. It's not the right way to live a life. She should find a husband, and get married, and then have a child in a natural way. Why does she want to bring a child from somebody that wasted seed? It's you know what kind of soul that seed will have. It's it's a wicked person. If you wouldn't even look at him in the street, but you're going to take his seed. It doesn't make any sense. At the very least, if you find somebody that you want to be with, you want to reproduce, then at the very least you'll know what you're doing. I don't understand why anybody would do such a thing. Question, how do I get Gan Eden when I'm full of sin, and how do I sacrifice my life to live with Hashem's path consistent basis? Well, as far as the sins that were made, we do tshuva. Tshuva is first stopping the sin. Second, making sure that we learn enough and do enough life changes to stay away from repeating the sin. 3, saying I'm sorry for the sin. And if tested again, to pass the test. So that takes care of all the sins. And then of course, it's learning Torah and doing mitzvot. If you occupy yourself with learning Torah and doing mitzvot throughout your day, whether your day is the day of an avrech that learns Torah all day, or your day is of a worker that works most of the day, it can still be comprised of mitzvot. You don't have to be an avrech or rabbi that's learning Torah all day just to do mitzvot. Every Jew can do mitzvot from morning to night, even if they're working all day. You can do business honestly, that's a mitzvah. You tell the truth, that's a mitzvah. You pay your employees on time, that's a mitzvah. You say a blessing before you eat, that's a mitzvah. You say a blessing after you go to the bathroom, that's a mitzvah. You pray in the morning, that's a mitzvah. You give tzedakah, that's a mitzvah. Your whole day can be full of mitzvot. So you don't have to be a big Talmid Chacham in order to go to Gan Eden. You could be a righteous Jew that gets Gan Eden. In fact, Mar Ukva was a person that was a business person. He didn't know much Torah, but he was offered a immorality with some woman, and he passed the test. He didn't do it, and because of that, he got a big blessing from Hashem, that he had a spiritual aura among him that only the righteous people were able to see. Rabbi Akiva saw it, and he asked him, who are you? What are you? And he saw that he's not a Torah scholar, but he's a decent person. And he realized this person is a special neshama that has a lot of potential. He says, come, I'll teach you Torah. Come, I'll teach you Torah. He went and he started sitting and learning Torah with Rabbi Akiva, and Mar Ukva became not only knowledgeable in Torah, he became one of the greatest sages that we ever had. Why? Because he passed the test. He passed the business test. He passed the morality test. He studied Torah, and ultimately he became not just knowledgeable, but he became extraordinarily knowledgeable and righteous. So, point is that a person that just thinks that just if you're in a Bet Midrash all day, that's the only way you're going to go to Gan Eden, it's not true. There are some people that are in a Bet Midrash but are going to Gehenom. And there are some people that are in a workforce but are going to Gan Eden. It all depends on how you conduct your day. If you conduct your day where it's full of mitzvot, you're not making any sins intentionally, you're constantly trying to do tshuva, you make time to learn Torah, Torah is your priority in life, even though you have to work, even though you have to struggle in order to make ends meet, but you still make Torah your priority in life. You constantly work on yourself, you pray, you give tzedakah to the right places, you are on the way to Gan Eden. But if a person thinks that the only way they're going to go to Gan Eden is if they're going to be learning Torah 24 hours a day, it's not true. Some people, they were brought into this world not to be Torah scholars and learning Torah all day, but rather to help Torah scholars financially, because Hashem gave them the blessing of a lot of money or the ability to make a lot of money, and it's better for that person to learn a little bit of Torah and work more rather than learn a lot of Torah and work less. Why? Because he has a certain blessing. Chafetz Chaim one time saw that there was a very wealthy man that was a businessman, and he decided that he's going to quit his job and start learning Torah. And because of that, he wasn't making as much money, so he wasn't giving as much tzedakah. And on Yom Kippur, he, when everybody went home and during the break in the middle of the day, taking a break for like an hour or 2 hours, this businessman that's getting stronger in Torah stayed in the shul and continued reading Tehillim. The Chafetz Chaim came to him and said to him, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm reading Tehillim for the Rav." He says, "Why is that going to help you?" He said, "For the Rav, I'm reading Tehillim. I'm not sleeping. I'm not." He goes, "Yeah, but you're committing treason anyway." Because me committing treason? How for the Rav? Chas v'shalom. I'm learning. I'm keeping Shabbat. I'm learning Torah. He says, "Let me ask you something. Did you go to the army?" He said, "Yes." He says, "You fought in the war?" He said, "Yes." He says, "So if you fought in the war, let's say you were one of the soldiers that was in the front lines, and you decided that in tomorrow's battle, you're not going to go to the front lines. Instead, you're going to be one of the guys that decides to be a scout, to see when the enemy is coming, to help the snipers. Now, if your commander finds this out, is he going to reward you or punish you?" For the Rav, of course he's going to punish me. Why is he going to punish you? Because I'm not doing my job. Because how is he going to punish you? Because with such a thing, if I'm doing something against the commander, it's committed as if I helped the enemy. Because they depended on me being in the front line. Instead of being in the front line, I went and I did something else that could cause other people to die. And what do they call that in the army, he says? So they call that, it's a form of treason, Rabbi. But what does that have to do with me? He says, everything. You were brought into the world, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave you a blessing where you're successful in making money. You're successful in making money. You're good at making money. And that way you were able to help the Torah scholars. You were able to help the poor. But you decided, no, I don't want to be a businessman anymore. I'm going to go and learn Torah all day. You're committing treason. Why? Who told you that you're allowed to go learn Torah all day? You could learn Torah. But when you have such success with making money, you learn Torah for part of the day, and you still continue making that money. But if you're not able to do that, where you have to abandon your job in order to learn Torah, no. You go and you work and you learn less Torah. Why? Because the money that you're making is helping a lot more Torah be learned and a lot more righteous people eat than what you're doing by yourself. And you changing without asking for permission, that's treason. The guy understood, Chafetz Chaim is not kidding, and of course he did tshuva and he went back to work after the holiday. So a person needs to know that everybody has a role in the world, but that doesn't mean that anybody has a free ride where they don't learn Torah. Everybody has to learn Torah. Question is how much. But either way, even if a person works mainly and learns Torah less during the day, they still learn Torah every day, but they're not learning for 10 hours a day. They still need to know that if they use part of the money that they're working for to publicize the Torah, they're giving, let's say, 10% of their income to publicize Torah, then even their job, every minute that they're working, is considered a mitzvah. It's considered as if they learned Torah the whole time. So it's a big deal to support Torah. It's not just, we were just, giving money to somebody and, they could eat today. No. Publicizing Torah is a big deal. Big deal. Can somebody ask for money for being your chavruta? Why would you pay somebody to be your chavruta? There's plenty of people that would study with you for free. But unless that person that you're asking to be your chavruta is a very busy person or a very big scholar that is lowering themselves and taking away from themselves in order to teach you. But if you're both on the same level, you don't need to pay anybody. But if you are, in essence, this is somebody that's teaching you, and he could be using that time to make money, then certainly he could charge you money for it because he's teaching you. But again, it depends. It depends. But if it's just two people studying, they're both on the same level, I don't understand why anybody would charge or somebody would pay for such a thing. So it could be that he may be calling it chavuta as out of modesty, but in reality it's not a chavuta. He's really teaching you, and therefore he wants to charge for it. And if he wants to do that, he has the right to do it. It's because he has the ability to make money with that time instead of teaching you. So he can charge. For those with health issues, is it allowed to move quickly on Shabbat for health before eating? Like exercise, but not really. Yeah, of course. Yeah, there's no problem with, if it's for health reasons, for a person to, yeah, sure, there's no problem with that. Reading Birkot Eliyahu, I still don't understand before and after blessings when eating mezonot for dessert after a bread meal. That's why it's better if you're going to eat mezonot, it's better for you to eat the mezonot after you have not only completed the bread meal, but after you've already said the Birkat HaMazon. And then after you finish the Birkat HaMazon, then you do a separate blessing for the mezonot, for the cookie or cake that you want to eat. And when you finish it, if you ate a certain amount, then you do the ending blessing for that mezonot. Don't eat mezonot while you're eating a bread meal. It complicates things a lot more than most people can handle. Okay, I think we're done. Even I said one question, ended up being a little more. David HaMelech said, Darkei Noam, implying that Hashem's intention in giving the Torah is that it should be promulgated among others with sweetness and kindness, and to bring them close to Hashem. How do you reconcile with this, your more aggressive approach, which is very, very recent in Chazal, an outlook we have never seen in the Torah world? Well, I'm sorry to tell you that you're not familiar with David HaMelech, nor are you familiar with Chazal, nor are you familiar with the Torah if you're saying such a thing. Why? And we'll finish this off with this question. As far as Darkei Noam, it means that you're going to help people as a result of teaching the Torah in a way that is going to be soothing, full of truth, full of intention for the benefit of others, not pacifying people, not trying to get something out of people, but rather for the sake of helping other people. And every person needs to be taught in a certain way. Sometimes there's a person that needs to be taught in a way where you're trying to inspire him to do things by giving him stories of inspiration. Sometimes you have to inspire him by giving him hope. Sometimes you have to inspire him by giving him fear. Sometimes you have to inspire him by giving him love. Different inspiration at different times. That's what Darkei Noam, meaning that you're always going to have the primary intention of helping people be inspired. Now, as far as saying that you only can inspire people by saying that they're all good and they're all righteous and they're all wonderful no matter what they do, this is not the way of Torah. This is not the way of David HaMelech. This is not the way of Chazal. And anyone that says so is simply clueless. With all due respect to you, that you are unfortunately been misteaching or mistaught, but I can prove it to you. Number one, when you first start learning Torah, what's the first parasha? Parashat Bereshit. Parashat Bereshit tells us that Adam HaRishon got everything you could possibly imagine, but he still sinned and he got punished. He got punished. He got kicked out of the Gan Eden, right? And at that time that he got kicked out of Gan Eden, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm going to keep him out of Gan Eden. How I'm going to keep him out of Gan Eden? I'm going to put the chuvim, the cherubs, at the Gan Eden. But yet, these same cherubs we learn about in this week's parasha. So we learn about the cherubs in the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse 24, that they are destructive angels. If Adam HaRishon or anybody comes close to Gan Eden, they'll be killed right away. But we also learn about the cherubs in this week's parasha, where there's these beautiful baby-looking things that are angels that are able to move, that look at Am Yisrael once a year when they open the parochet and of the Kodesh Kodeshim, Gemara Masechet Yoma. All of Am Yisrael looks at it. If the angels of the Kruvim are looking at them, that's favorable. If they're looking away, it's unfavorable. In so many words, the same cherubs are cute little babies, but are an indication of where we stand. We also said they're destructive angels. Why? Because this and this is needed. That's why the second parasha, after we go into this whole thing of first parasha, second parasha, destruction of the world. How do you teach destruction of the world in a nice way? Oh yeah, they were really nice people. They didn't mean to sin, so Hashem killed all of them. That is turning Hashem into a monster. No, what we say in the Torah, they were Reshaim. There was Hamas. There were Hamas, not just like the nation, the people of Hamas today, but Hamas in those times, people that were stealing, people that were committing homosexuality, people that were committing all types of immorality. That's why Hashem destroyed them. Fast forward, Sodom and Gomorrah, time of Avraham Avinu. What were they? Sodom and Gomorrah, destroyed. What do you teach them? No, Sodom and Gomorrah, they didn't mean to. They meant well. Hashem loves them. No, He hated them. That's why He destroyed them. Fast forward, Egypt. Egypt killed us every single day. 150 babies in the morning, 150 babies at night. Would Hashem love them? No, He hated them. That's why He destroyed them. All of the wicked people from the time of Noah reincarnated into Sodom, reincarnated into Egypt. Hashem hated all of them. And in fact, He also punished all of the Jews that didn't want to accept the Torah, and He killed over 80% of the Jews in Egypt. They never made it to Mount Sinai. So when you tell them, oh no, they didn't mean to, Hashem loves everybody. No, He punished them by killing them because they didn't want to accept the Torah. So what we see here is that Hashem is constantly killing who He calls His enemies, which includes Jews. We also hear in the Torah that Hashem says, in this week's parasha, a Jew that violates Shabbat gets death penalty. So what are you going to say? Oh, if you drive on Shabbat, Hashem loves you anyway, it's okay. No, He doesn't. He said He'll kill you. Yeah, but He didn't really mean it. Oh, so Hashem is a liar? No, He said it, He's going to do it. Same thing if you look at Parashat Bechukotai, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us a series of 4 curses that happen to people that go against the Torah. 4 curses. And if that's not enough, you go to Parashat Ki Tavo, where you have 8 curses. 8 curses, almost 100 curses. For people that do not observe Shabbat, people that we see, people that go against God in the mitzvot, they don't follow Torah. What did Hashem lie? He changed the Torah. He meant it over there, but He didn't mean over here. No, Hashem wants you to know there's reward and punishment. That's why, if you look at the Rambam, Sefer HaMitzvot, mitzvah number 3. Mitzvah number 3, HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us, one of the most important mitzvot, for you, my dear friend, to know, because this is going to help you understand how wrong what you said is. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not say this for no reason. The Rambam mitzvah number 3. We'll get there. Hold tight. This Baruch Hashem is... Rambam. You know Rambam? You know more than the Rambam? Your rabbi know more than the Rambam? No. Okay, I don't know more than the Rambam either. Rambam knows more than all of us, right? So let's see what does the Rambam say. It's mitzvah number 3. Mitzvah number 3 in the Torah. Mitzvah number 3 is to love HaShem. Mitzvah number 3 is to love HaShem. Now you would think, oh, to love HaShem, that's proving my point. No. Mitzvah number 3 is to love HaShem. That means removing our own desires, reflect on ourselves to do tshuva. So how does this teach fear? It doesn't teach fear. You go to mitzvah number 4 for that. Mitzvah number 4 says, להאמין יראתו יתעלה ולהיפחד ממנו ולא יהיה ככופרים ההולכים בקרי אבל נראה ביד עונשו בכל עת והוא אמרו יתעלה את השם אלוהיך תירא. Fourth commandment, fourth mitzvah, Rambam, Sefer HaMitzvot. The fourth positive commandment is that which he has commanded us to believe in awe-inspiring nature of the Exalted One and to fear him. This includes not to be like the heretics who do as they wish without regards for the consequences of their actions, but rather to fear the blessed one's punishment at any moment. This is what the exalted God said in the Torah, fear the Lord your God. This is in verse Deuteronomy chapter 6 verse 13. Easy to remember is 6:13. And that's why in the Talmud, Masechet Sanhedrin says the Rambam, page 56a, the sages discuss, which will answer your sage claim. The sages discuss the intent of the word nokev in the verse in Leviticus 24:16, where it says, and he who blasphemes, who nokev, the name of the Lord shall surely be put to death. Perhaps nokev denotes simply mentioning his name in vain, as implied by a different verse, where it says who were mentioned nikuv by name. And if you would ask where the warning against mentioning God's name, such as the Torah now is saying the punishment, that this would be from the verse, fear Lord your God, the Rambam explains that, in other words, perhaps the verse refers simply to mentioning the name of God without blaspheming it. And if you ask what sin this was, the answer would be that one is thereby annulled the commandment of fearing Hashem by complying with the command to not mention his name in vain. So, in so many words, what the Rambam is saying here, or what the Talmud is saying here, says the Rambam, is that this argument is completely incorrect. This argument is completely incorrect, but rather, what is it? He's rejecting the argument. He's saying, for one thing, in order to transgress the prohibition of nokev, we need what is referred to in Jewish law as name with name. And this does not occur when one simply mentions his name without blaspheming it. And therefore, it's necessary for invoking the death penalty that one blasphemes God's name with his name. Like saying, let Yossi smite Yossi. And furthermore, the command to fear is a warning through a positive commandment. And a warning through a positive commandment is not considered a warning. Rather, you can posit that fear the Lord your God as a warning, as a positive commandment in itself. And a positive commandment is not employable as a warning. And therefore, conclusion is, fearing Hashem is a positive commandment. In so many words, the Rambam is explaining why fearing Hashem is a commandment and not just a suggestion or as something that you can choose to do or not to do. In so many words, the Rambam is giving the details of why every one of the mitzvot is what it is. Point being is that there is multiple mitzvot in the Torah that are to fear Hashem. And not just fear is all, but fear punishment. Fear mamash, genom. That's what the Baal Shem Tov and his Talmidim, Rabbi Elimelech Milezhinsk, Rabbi Zusha, and many of the Chachamim that followed Chassidut taught that fearing HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not just fearing his awe and his majesty, but to actually fear Gehenna, to actually fear punishment. Now, if a person looks at the 5 books of Moses, they'll quickly see that this is clear, as Hashem shows punishment in every single parasha in the Torah. He talks about punishment. So if he didn't want you to be afraid of him, why is he mentioning punishment? That's why at Mount Sinai, when Am Yisrael was afraid to continue hearing God's voice, Moshe Rabbeinu tells Am Yisrael, Hashem is scaring you so you don't sin. Meaning, Hashem is intentionally scaring you so you don't sin. The Gemara in Masechet Brachot says, why is there thunder? Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu create thunder? To create lightning, you could rationalize it in a million ways. But to create thunder just makes a bunch of noise. Why create thunder? Gemara says HaKadosh Baruch Hu created thunder in order to straighten out our hearts. Meaning, in order to scare us and realize that we are under the control of God. And if we continue going against God, He'll punish us. Furthermore, if you say that the Torah says that no punishment, or it should be only lovey-dovey, you have to wipe out every parasha in the Torah. Now if you say that David HaMelech, also lovey-dovey Torah and only everybody's righteous, then explain to me the Tehillim that every Jew reads, not only every day, but specifically every Wednesday, where the Tehillim starts, El Nekamot Hashem, El Nekamot Ofia. What is El Nekamot Hashem, El Nekamot Ofia? God is the God of vengeance. The God of vengeance has arrived. This Tehillim that David HaMelech wrote talks about the wrath of God and the punishment that He gives the wicked. So you have said Lashon Hara against David HaMelech. The sages in the Gemara, Masechet Shabbat, page 54, 55, 56, talk about the different horrendous punishments that Jews get for not rebuking the public, for not rebuking their fellow Jews. To the extent that they say that the reason why Kadosh Baruch Hu destroyed the Beit HaMikdash is because the Jews were not rebuking. Gemara, Masechet Chagiga, page 12, says that Jeremiah the prophet asked HaKadosh Baruch Hu not to destroy the Beit HaMikdash. HaKadosh Baruch Hu that spoke to Jeremiah, because he was a prophet, says to him, if you could go and find me one synagogue where the rabbi is speaking and rebuking his people, I won't destroy the Beit HaMikdash. Jeremiah went from Keilah to Keilah, from place to place, to find at least one rabbi that's rebuking the people. He couldn't find one. And he cried to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, said, I can't find one. Hashem says, the decree is final, I'm destroying the Beit HaMikdash. And then Jeremiah cried in Sefer Eicha that he wrote. And we say this in our prayers on Mondays and Thursdays. Anshe Emunah Avadu. There's no more men of faith. What's Anshe Emunah Avadu? It's not people that don't have Emunah in Hashem that's going to help them. No. People that have faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu and His Emet and His Torah that are going to stand up for it and teach people the truth. So you spoke and said the sages don't teach it. Now you're going to say, oh, Aaron HaKohen. Aaron HaKohen loved everybody. Mishnah, Masechet Avot, says in the name of Aaron HaKohen, Aaron Ohev Shalom, Rodef Shalom, he loves peace, he chases peace, Umekarvam La Torah, and he brings people to the Torah. What does it mean brings people to the Torah? He loves peace, he chases peace, but he brings people up to the Torah. He doesn't bring the Torah down to them. To say that you're not allowed to teach people about reward and punishment is in essence speaking against Aaron HaKohen. Moshe Rabbeinu, Gemara, Masechet Megillah. Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to continue living. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, no, I have to take your neshama. Tana Devei Eliyahu talks about it, and also Avot Rabbi Natan talks about the dialogue between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Moshe Rabbeinu, where Moshe Rabbeinu has perfected his body to the extent that it was on the same level as Neshama. Avot Rabbi Natan says HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to convince Moshe Rabbeinu to leave this world. Convince him. Like a husband convinced a wife convinced a husband. But after he convinced him, he took his neshama out. The Gemara Masechet Megillah says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu cried, and he says, who's going to rebuke my people like Moshe Rabbeinu? Who's going to yell at my people and tell them to do tshuva? Who? Who's going to do it? Zohar Kadosh brings Yeshua ben Nun. Yeshua ben Nun yelled at Am Yisrael, why are you going against Hashem? Scared them, said you're going to go to Gehenom. HaKadosh Baruch Hu came to Yeshua ben Nun. Yeshua ben Nun was a prophet after Moshe Rabbeinu. Yeshua, why are you scaring my people? Yeshua ben Nun says to Hashem, you know I didn't scare them for the sake of my honor or the honor of my father. I scared them for your honor, so they don't go against the Torah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Zohar Kadosh says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu kissed the hands of Yeshua ben Nun. Thank you for scaring my people, because your intention was to help them do tshuva. Thank you. So now you have Avraham Avinu. Zohar Kadosh, Parashat Re'eh, says people used to come to Avraham Avinu. Everybody knows Avraham Avinu had openings, 4 corners, guests. He wanted to convince them to abandon idolatry. Give him food. That's what everybody knows. What everybody doesn't know, Zohar Kadosh says, Parashat Re'eh, how did Avraham Avinu convince him to do tshuva? How? What do you tell him? Hashem's going to give you a reward? He likes you? He'll give you money? No. Avraham Avinu would teach them about Gehenom. If you continue with the idol worship, you'll be in this chamber. If you continue with the prostitute, you'll be in that chamber. If you continue doing this, you'll be in that chamber. He would tell them the details of Gehenom. Avraham Avinu made millions of people do tshuva by teaching about Gehenom. Moshe Rabbeinu left Egypt. Between leaving Egypt, getting to Mount Sinai, 50 days. What do you do in 50 days? Zohar Kadosh says, Moshe Rabbeinu taught them Torah. What Torah did he teach them? Did he get Torah yet? Moshe Rabbeinu taught them about Gehenom. Told them, you continue sinning, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will put you in different chambers of Gehenom. Gemara, Masechet Shabbat. Last perek, believe it's page 154, B. Says, person that goes against the Kadosh Baruch Hu can learn from David HaMelech. Why? David HaMelech said in the book of Shmuel, Sefer Shmuel, that if certain people go against Hashem, they go to Kafakela. What's Kafakela? That's when somebody's so bad, they don't even have the merit to go to Gehenom. They go to Kafakela for an extra sentence over there. The Arizal says, could be 1,000 years, could be 1,000,000 years. Kafakela. What's Kafakela? Gemara Masechet Shabbat says, it's when there's angels of destruction fling the neshama from one end of the earth to the other end of the world and destroy it and beat it the whole time. Rabbi Akiva saw one of these people one time. Asked him what's happening to you. He told him what's happening to him. Rabbi Akiva was able to help that neshama. Rabbi Yehuda Ftaya, Sefer Minchot Yehuda, talks about how he spoke to people that are in Kafakela. They told him what's happening to them while they're speaking to him. How they're being literally destroyed in ways that are beyond your comprehension. Was Rabbi Yehuda Ftaya a liar? Was Moshe Rabbeinu a liar? Avraham Avinu a liar? Zohar Kadosh is a liar? Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is a liar? Rabbi Akiva is a liar? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a liar? Everybody's a liar except you! Everybody's a liar except the Erev Rav that told you there's no fear. Fear is a commandment from the Torah. Commandment from the Torah. If you don't fear HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you're going to sin. You're going to go against the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What's fear against the HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Fear of punishment. Fear of punishment. What's fear of punishment? Punishment that you're going to go to Gehenom. Punishment, you can go to Kafakela. Punishment, you get sick and die. Punishment that's much further than you could possibly comprehend. Punishment that makes the Holocaust look like kindergarten. To teach people about punishment is absolutely necessary. So to say Darkei Torah, Darkei Noam, where you can't teach people about punishment and you lovey-dovey everybody, that's not Torah, Habibi. Not from David HaMelech and not from anybody in Judaism. Not from anybody in Judaism. As far as Chazal has extensive sections of the Gemara to discuss different types of punishment. Gemara, Masechet Sanhedrin, Perek Chelek, has details of punishment, death penalties. Which one, there's a debate between the Chachamim, which death penalty is the worst one. Do you know that? Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai argues against Rabbi Yehuda, which death penalty is the worst one, which one hurts the most. There's no respectfully disagree. There's no disagree. You're wrong. Your rabbi's wrong. You're clueless. Our Torah is real. Our Torah doesn't change. Our Torah, there's no machloket here. You look at the Chachamim, that's what they say. This entire section of Gemara Masechet Sanhedrin talks about which punishment is worse. Which one hurts more. There's a Gemara Masechet Makot. You know what Makot is? Makot is whipping. Why? For sins. There are entire sections of the Torah that talk about punishment. Why? Because punishment is necessary in order for God to be good and just. And that's why the Ramban, Nachmanides, in Shara Gmul, says in section 7, anyone that says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's sentence of punishment is limited to 12 months is a Rasha, because they have turned God into an evil God that punishes everyone the same. No such thing. The Arizal, in Shara Gilgulim, talks about different sentences of reincarnations. All of them are different forms of punishment. All of them are different forms of punishment. Gemara Masechet Psachim, first perek, says Rabbi Yochanan, when he would teach them about punishment. He would teach them about reward and punishment. Everybody would come. They would do tshuva. But then there was not enough room. So you got a bigger space. There's not enough room. You got a different space. Not enough room. They had to give them a section outside of the Bet HaMikdash. Outside. Why? There's not enough space. So many tens of thousands of people showed up. To what? To hear about Gehenom. To hear about punishment. What do you think? Rabban Yochanan came and told them, Hashem loves you no matter what. Lovey-dovey. Hashem needs you. No. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is emet. And that's why every infant that starts to learn Torah, every child that starts to learn Torah, every adult that starts to learn Torah, learns about reward and punishment right off the bat. How? Adam HaRishon sinned, he got punished. Cain sinned, he got punished. The generation of Noach sinned, they got punished. Not to say, oh, but maybe you can say punishment, but not the way you say it, Rabbi. Not the way that I say it. Do you know any of the strong speakers of the people that changed Am Yisrael throughout the generations? Go look. Who are the ones that build communities? Like Rav Nissim again, alav hashalom. Like Rav Shalom Shvadron, alav hashalom. Like the Ben Ish Chai, alav hashalom. Like Rav Ovadia Yosef, alav hashalom. Like Rav Elazar Shach, alav hashalom. Great Chachamim spoke in such a voice at times, make me look like a little puppy. Why? Because when you care, you express that you care. You care about yourself. So you are not going to do what I do. How do I know you care about yourself? Because all you care about is to express the opinion that's wrong in order to bring a point out that you think is correct. Now, if you were to measure what you do versus what I do for Klal Yisrael, you would not make such a comment. Why? Because what you do is you take care of yourself, perhaps you donate to one or two people, and that's it. I donate my whole life. I don't need to know what you do, but I can assure you that you and your rabbi would not survive one day in my life. Why? Because I donate my whole life to Klal Yisrael. My whole life. And it's not a matter of arrogance. It's not a matter of, I'm better than you. It's a matter of, what do the receipts say? Who's doing what? When you wake up in the morning, what do? You go take care of yourself. When you go to sleep, what do you think about? You think about yourself. When you live during the day, what do? You think about yourself. All the things that you do is for you. Am I making money out of this lecture? No. Am I making money out of any of this stuff? No. So, to go and tell me how to help Am Yisrael, at the very least, since you're not willing to sacrifice what I sacrifice, you have to show me your receipts. What are your results? How many people have you changed this week, this month, this lifetime, to go and abandon their wicked ways and come back to Hashem? To stop going against Hashem. How many people would you help? 1, 2, 5? Once we spoke to a rabbi in Canada. About 5, you say. 5 you helped? Habibi, what you do in a lifetime, I've done in a day. And yes, it is a competition. Why? Because you say your way is better. If your way is better, go! Do it! Why are you wasting your time talking to me? Why are you wasting time talking to me? Go help Am Yisrael. Stop talking to me. Go help Am Yisrael. Right now you have thousands of people watching my shiur online, and every single one of them is making a comment of how this shiur is affecting their life. People have transformed their life. Some have even changed their religion in order to come back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu as a result of the shiurim that they watch. So if you're going to say that there's a better way, show me someone that has better results than me. Show me one. You show me one, if it fits, I'll publicize it. If it fits for me to do it, I'll do it myself. But I can assure you, I follow in the footsteps of my Rav, who follows in the footsteps of his Rabbanim, who follow in the footsteps of all of the great sages throughout all of history until Moshe Rabbeinu. This is how the Magid Miduvna spoke. This is how the greatest speakers of Am Yisrael spoke. Go read some of the books of the Magid Miduvna. Not just what he wrote, but books that were written about him and how he was spoke. Go read about Arav Shalom Shvadron. Not just about what he wrote, but how people spoke about him and how he lived his life. Go read about Arav Nisim Yagin. Go read about all of these great sages, how they spoke to Am Yisrael. Go read about Moshe Rabbeinu. Find me one great tzaddik that actually changed the masses by speaking like the people that you think are doing better. Because we spoke to some of those people that you think are doing better, and when they told me their numbers, my colleague, who was friends with them, said, how long are you doing kiruv, Rabbi? And the rabbi over there said he was doing kiruv for 25 years. He says, how many people have you helped do tshuva in those 25 years? He said proudly, 10 people, maybe even 11. He said, Rabbi, it's good. 10 people have changed their life. But if you look at the results that this aggressive Yaron Reuven is doing, following in the footsteps of the greatest Chachamim in history, he gets more in a week than you've done in 25 years. Oh, how can I help now? So Habibi, if you want to criticize me personally, I'm too ugly, I'm too fat, I'm too loud, I'm too obnoxious, I'm too this, I'm too that, I care less. Say what you want. But if you want to criticize the Torah, David HaMelech, the sages, and say that they did something that's the opposite of what they actually did, or that what they did is wrong and no longer applicable to our generation, then I have to speak up. Why? I have to prove, for the sake of the public, that what you're saying is wrong. I don't know who you are, or what you do, and any of the results that you've gotten. All I know is a few things that you wrote here, some of them that I read, but I can tell you that you have been misled. Misled about how to help people change their life, misled about the sages, misled about the Torah, misled of how to teach Torah, misled about how we teach and what the results are. If you want to see some of the results, you could either follow the lectures, you could watch the podcast of people speaking for themselves, you could watch the letters and the comments that I made. You can see the results instead of take my word for it. But either way, before you speak in the name of David HaMelech or the sages or the Torah, at the very least, do yourself the service and learn it first. Don't just assume that Darkei Torah, Darkei Noam is what the local rabbi said in the drasha to make you feel good is really the pshat. Because it's not. There's a lot more to the Torah than just teaching nice things. The Torah is reward and punishment. It can't just be reward, it can't just be punishment. If you just reward your wife, eventually she'll leave you. If you just punish your wife, eventually she'll leave you. How do you get her to stay? Reward and punishment. Same thing with your kids, same thing with yourself, same thing with employees. It comes together. Reward and punishment is necessary. And if a person doesn't connect to me or the way that I speak, it doesn't make much of a difference to me. I'm not looking for fans or likes. But the moment that a person says that what we're saying is wrong, that's a different story, because that has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with me. That's what the Chachamim have been teaching for generations. If the Chachamim said it, it is right. Not it must be right, it is right. Why? Because these are the words of the living God. So if you want to look at what the Chachamim have done and what have said, I suggest you educate yourself. Not from people, from books. Go read the books. Read. Magid Miduvna. Read. Rav Shalom Zbadron. Read. Rav Avigdor Miller. Read any of the great Chachamim from any part of Am Yisrael. Doesn't matter where. Chassidut, Sephardi, Ashkenazi. Read about the leaders. Read about how they lived their life and how they delivered the message. Surely everybody's righteous, everybody's good, but as far as how they delivered the message, how do they get people to change? How do they get people inspired? And you'll see that in fact, the message is exactly the same as what we're doing here. No different. In fact, if I was really being honest with you, I have to pick it up a notch and be even more than what I'm doing now. So BeEzrat HaShem, you'll see this by seeing the lectures. You'll see this by reading the books. And you'll see exactly. Because those that spoke like this. Those that wrote even more than this. And BeEzrat HaShem, we will continue to be able to follow in their footsteps. Thank you very much for learning with me. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu bless each and every single one of you, including the ones that want to disagree. The whole purpose of the answer was not to go against any one particular person per se, but rather to defend the honor of the Torah for what it is. It has nothing to do with me. Like me or dislike me, does not make much of a difference. The key is to know what the Torah says and not necessarily what Yaron Reuven says. Whether Yaron Reuven lives or dies, Torah stays the same. The way the Torah has been transmitted from generation to generation is exactly like we're doing it. Somebody wants to do something else, by all means, everybody has a right to do something else, different shita, different things, whatever works for you, as long as it works. But don't think for a moment that your way is necessarily the way of the sages. You have to look at what the sages did. And you'll see, the more you learn about the sages, the more you learn about David HaMelech, the more you learn about Moshe Rabbeinu, the more you learn about the greatest people that ever led Am Yisrael, the more you'll see, wow, I guess it wasn't so different than what he's saying. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen v'Amen.